getting the most of the benefits. We are not.
You think so?
We hope so. At least somebody gets something out of it.
Sahil, please start now.
Yeah. Okay. Because it's showing it's a practice session, that's why. Okay. Welcome to Budget with Business World. In this session, we will decode what this union budget means for the tech sector in the country. I am Sahil Mohan Gupta, and I have an amazing panel of luminaries from the industry. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to the panel. Avneet Singh Marwa, CEO of Super Plustronics Private Limited, the company behind television brands like Kodak, Blopunk, and Thomson. Neil Shah, who is the co-founder and vice president research at Counterpoint Research. Faisal Kawusa, the chief analyst and founder of TechArc. And Nikhil Chawla, who is a renowned auto and tech columnist, content creator, and founder of The Unbiased. So this will be a freewheeling conversation, but before we jump into a deep dive of the budget, what are your first impressions of the budget? Avneet, if you will.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I think the first look at the budget is it's what I feel personally, it's a mere formality now. Budget, it's I think all the announcements keep on happening. Every month there is a press conference that happens from the FM or Ministry of Finance. So it's just a feel good factor, I feel, that budget is there. It's not earlier like there were a couple of categories which used to get expensive, some categories duty structure used to get changed. I have three custom duties and structures that next month they might change. So I think it's become a formality, and it's just to put what's the intention of the government over here. They want to do ease of doing business. They want to 3 crore more homes household they want to build in. So there is a market where the entry level consumer durable goods will go. So and then capex 11 lakh crore rupees on infrastructure. So all these, I think, these all these factors keep on coming. It's just in formality that FM does every year, and I don't think that there is anything that is out of the way that she has said, or any big announcement she has made. The income tax was from 0 to 3 lakhs. I think that was due for a very long time. So I would say it's like any other FM press conference that is happening, and it will because now GST is different. Every month there is a GST meeting that keeps on happening. Slabs keep on revising, so there is no announcement of GST. We have been candid from last couple of years. Government promised that after 1 lakh crore rupees of collection, they will put down GST from 28% to 18% on televisions 32 and above. I think they have crossed 1,50,000 collection, and that too for a quarter. So a lot of things are happening, and still, and they want to grow consumerism. and 28% is the highest tax in the world for television in any developing economy.
That's that was quite a bit, Avneet. So overall, from what you're saying, is that this is more like tokenism, not a lot of reform happening out here.
Yeah, because reforms are, they are so candid. If any smallest of changes that happens, there is a press note about it. So
Yeah.
it's not that we don't know this or there's a big announcement that's happening. Uh, for example, I'll give you a very good example on infrastructure. The capex that FM has given yesterday, they had given year on year from last 7 years. I'm hearing the capex have going increased, but the deadlines are missing. Sahil. Any road project, any railway project that's and not by what 2 months, 3 months, by 2 years. Logistic, for example, the rail logistic that was supposed to happen from Dadri to New Delhi was supposed to get completed in 23, 22. I can imagine 1.5 years because of the pandemic, but still it's not been completed. The groundwork has not been done completely. So yes, that's what I've said. It's a feel-good factor. It shows the intent of the government, but no big apart from some lollipops that I always keep on telling everyone. There is, it's just a mere announcement that keeps on happening.
Okay.
I think it should be more result oriented.
Yeah.
When they should give a report card, whatever they have said last time, how much they have achieved, what have they passed any deadlines. I think then it's a complete budget for us.
Yeah. Let me move on to Neil. What are your first impressions, particularly for the tech sector?
Yeah, I think coming into this second budget of the year, I would say the initial budget, which was done February, there was obviously a lot of investments put towards tech sector, especially for MeitY, and there were expectations were high because the elections were coming in, right, in May, June, and after the elections, now the expectations are again high that after elections, what is the next roadmap for India, right? So obviously, as I said, the expectations were high, but as Mr. Avneet said, it has been more incremental. Whatever the reforms happened like 5 years ago in terms of for technology sector, especially with Make in India, Digital India, uh, and as well as semiconductor PLI design. What I see, what stands out right now is where government is moving towards a couple of projects which they have allocated some revenue, which will increase in next few years. One is the AI mission, which has got 550 crores from zero last year, as well as on cybersecurity, it's almost doubled. So I think those are the two areas which will be hot in next 2 to 3 years. Apart from what has already been allocated to PLI, digital skilling, as well as semiconductors. I think that will keep on incrementally going. But I think the major focus the next couple of years is going to be on AI as well as cybersecurity.
Okay. Faisal, your thoughts?
Yeah, okay. So see, agreeing to fellow panelists, so broadly, if we look at the budget document, okay, there is enough talk around various technologies, various elements of technologies that the government is considering and wants to pursue. Okay. So directionally, that looks fine. That okay, you have a focus on satellite economy, you have a focus on pumped storage, you have focus on several other things. You have focus on digitization of land records. You have focus on DPI for agriculture, DPI for various social sectors like education, healthcare. So there is, if you look at directionally, so there are elements into it. Okay, all ingredients I suppose are there, but uh, there are two, three things which I want to point out. One, we had an interim budget vote on account earlier this year, and this was now the full-blown project, budget. And my expectation was that this will somehow set the blueprint for Viksit Bharat. Okay, because we have to start today, and we should have that roadmap that how the technology is going to play the role of an enabler in Viksit Bharat. Okay. So all those elements, I feel they are being talked about in the budget, but the detailing is missing. Okay. Now there's a talk around, like, for instance, you are going to create 1,000 crore VC fund for expanding space economy. Now, how is that, going to happen? I think those detailing, eventually this all this intent will only be realized once we see how that is being executed. And as Avneet pointed out, there is already a delay in a lot of executions. Okay, there was a report some time back where I think infrastructure projects are already delayed, and there is already overspending on them by many percentage points. In, I think, some states it's gone up by 42%. Okay, which is huge, almost half of what was initially allocated. And forget the timeline. So we are missing that, and it obviously will not include any opportunity cost, which we are missing by not using that infrastructure. So on the whole, what looks like, okay, all the elements that should go in a digital economy, in an economy which will lead us to say Viksit Bharat. But then how is that being executed? That is missing. And what is there in terms of executing and starting them in year one, which is this, or year zero? That detailing is missing. And other things, as Avneet rightly pointed out, some of the relevance of budget has, gone, I would say, lowered, because many things are being notified month on month, quarter on quarter. So those, and now industry is very much kind of also aligned to tweak and adjust and accommodate all those changes from time to time. So that's the first reaction I have around the budget.
Nikhil, we have gotten into the technical weeds of the budget, but for the average consumer, what do you feel the first impression feels like? Particularly, obviously, since we are talking about tech, consumer electronics, and all from that perspective. Nikhil, I think you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think Avneet has already set the tone for our session. But what I feel that for the average consumer, they just saw that the smartphones are getting cheaper, solar panels are getting cheaper, and they got excited about it. But overall, I think what I think was very significant was the government at least trying to lay down a roadmap for long-term employment and growth, and also abolishing the angel tax, which was something very incentivizing for startups and people who are planning to start their own, tech business or business, because the abolishment of angel tax kind of helps transform the startup economy and the ecosystem, which kind of removes significant barrier of growth, which people are always wary of, that they have to pay so much of angel tax. That I feel was really good. But apart from that, as I mentioned, for a general consumer, it was about my smartphone is getting cheaper, and I think the push to make semiconductors cheaper is significantly gonna make everything cheaper in terms of whatever uses semiconductor, and the increased allocation for semiconductors will again kind of make everything cheap. But Avneet would know better, because they said we'll be having an increased allocation of semiconductors, and it'll be cheaper, there'll be lesser duties on that. But as a person who's manufacturing these things with semiconductors, I think he's a better guy to tell us that would it really get cheaper, or is it just for the sake of it, the number put in our face, that to kind of lure the consumers, yes, these things are getting cheaper. So I think I'll pass on the ball to Avneet and tell us that is it exactly happening, or should we not be excited about it?
Yeah, so I'll just tell you what exactly when it comes to all the PLI schemes, and when it comes to local manufacturing. See, the intent of the government is that we were dependent on couple of countries for the raw material of components, the core raw material components, and and this was particularly one country that everyone was dependent on. So a lot of countries have thought about it, and there should be plus one or plus two in the world, where there should be different manufacture of these raw material components. These components are not very expensive, therefore, uh, countries like Korea, Japan, where the skill labor is very expensive, that got shifted, and in even US. So the intent of the government was that to encourage the local manufacturing. So they came up with couple of schemes like PLI. In PLI, first year nobody participated. It in terms of semiconductors, I'm saying, and whatever participation happened, that agreement didn't go through. After that, now I think after Tata has come in semiconductors, the intention is not getting cheaper or cheaper or not getting cheaper. The intent is local accessibility of the raw material. If that will start happening, obviously the overall uh, the pricing will be very competitive, and then government wants that not only in domestic market but globally also we are very competitive in terms of they feel that mobile phone at least we can do exports without any big ecosystem. We have already exported more than $1 billion of uh, mobile phones, so you can imagine the kind of potential that India has now. Other than that, there has been a couple of PLI schemes in large domestic appliances like air conditioner, lighting, and the intent has been very simple. Yes, there has been changes. A lot of players have started investing in the local component manufacturing. In terms of mobile phones, again, what I've said, it's just a one small thing that government wanted to showcase. They wanted to give an intent. The pricing is not going to change as much as people were expecting. It is just pennies if you talk about in terms of the value, and especially any big ticket size. So this is where that and FM didn't mention anything about PLI, but a very major project came in about I think 15 days back. They have extended the PLI scheme for next 3 years in large domestic appliances, which is a very big take. But nothing, as I told you, that every month there is some sort of release happening, and that is bigger than budget announcements. Let me tell you. Uh, Apart from that, apart from tech, one more thing that I wanted to add. See, there was railway budget and finance budget that was different. Yesterday, I don't know if I missed out, but there was nothing about railways. So, and you know that the kind of there's one or two incidents that keep on happening, but there's a lot of things happening in railways also, but and nothing was mentioned. So I feel that it's just a ongoing tradition that is going on, but a lot of things are more than budget. Things are happening on a weekly or a monthly basis. Yeah, Sahil, you,
Kyle, you're not audible.
Sahil, we're not able to hear you.
Kyle, please check the audio.
Yeah. Is it working now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the major announcement that has happened yesterday is that the reduction in import duty of chargers from 20% to 15%, and also for PCBs. Now, is this going to happen, have a tangible benefit for the end users, or will this just have a more of a macro impact on the bottom lines of various manufacturers who are daring to make in India? Neil, Faisal, you
Yeah.
guys would be the best ones to talk
Maybe
about
I
this.
Good
can.
morning, everyone.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. Should I
Hello.
go ahead, Sahil?
No, go for it.
Maybe I can start. Faisal can chip in with his thoughts as well. So the duties, the basic custom duty, which is BCD, has been lowered from 20% to 15%. for PCBAs, chargers, as well as imported CBU, which is completely built unit mobile phones, right? So if you look at 99% of the phones, anyways, are assembled and manufactured in India right now. Only 1% which are imported, which are mostly the premium models, which are from Apple, Pro models, which are being imported. And also some new vendors which are entering the ecosystem, like Honor, for example, or Google Pixel did, right? Now they have found a partner, but those models were being imported last year. So for them, there will be a reprieve for those who are importing mobile phones, but it's still very small percentage. It will be great for Apple to save at least 5% more, which would translate to maybe like 35 to $50 million of saving, which they could pass it on to a consumer or channels or whatever, however they wish to, which they will have a cushion over there. And we hope it will happen indirectly or directly during festive seasons or so forth. But it won't have a material impact from CBU point of view, complete built unit, because most of the phones are being assembled at CKD level, which is completely knocked down, where even the PCBs, raw PCBs are being imported, which attracts a very lower custom duty, and all the components are being populated here using SMT machines. So even the PCBA, which is assembled PCB, the duty does not affect much, except for some instances where there is a shortage of lines in terms of capacity, where they import the populated PCBA. So the overall impact to the consumer is very low, except for someone who is in the market to buy a Apple iPhone Pro models, and eventually it might get cheaper with 16 series coming in.
Okay. Faisal?
Yeah, so adding to what Neil said, exactly. I found it a bit kind of, misaligned to what government has been doing so far. Okay, you never were encouraging CBUs or completely built units. You always wanted to increase the barriers so that the smartphone OEMs are forced to, assemble it locally and then go deeper into the integrations. This needs to be really understand why it has been done. It's looking at it will favor a few brands only, as Neil rightly pointed out, and at the same time it helps certain brands at the time of launching one of those flagship models, because at that time they predominantly import the first lot of shipments, and then in the gradual process they start assembling them, and some are still not yet assembled in India. So it's completely, I would say, opposite to what has been done so far. Okay. And will it benefit consumer? Because, I was really surprised in the statement when Honorable FM was reading out the budget statement. She mentioned that the smartphone or the mobile phone industry has matured, okay, over the past few years. So when any industry matures, you don't, usually, lower the rate, tax rates. You usually try to see how you can, increase the revenue, government share revenue over there. So that was a bit kind of surprising why that's happened. Regarding other, BCD on PCBA mobile charges, yes, it's a very nominal, incremental savings that the OEMs can make out of it. Now, will it be beneficial? That is a question mark. Eventually, it depends on how OEMs are planning to utilize this, whatever they will save. One of the ways could be, and that will be restricted to few OEMs only, because they are spread all across the segments. Okay. We know right now one of the challenges or the problem statement they have before OEMs is how do we make more, affordable 5G smartphones, essentially sub 10K. Okay. So will some of the OEMs they have that, I would say they have that maneuverability that they can, save from all the segments they are present in, and then utilize that money to see how they can make 5G at the entry level more affordable. But that all depends on how they're going to utilize it. So, it's not something which is mandatory. It's their call. They want to pass it on to consumer. They want to give it to channels. They want to spend on marketing, or they want to maybe put that money into local investments. That's their call.
I mean, one of the interesting things about this is that a lot of the phones, especially at the high end, they don't even come with chargers. You have to buy them separately. But Nikhil, what are your thoughts? Of course, Apple is the 800-pound gorilla which could benefit from this, but there are a lot of other brands. Only a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about Honor. So a lot of their phones are being manufactured abroad.
So I think, yes, you're right. I mean, as Neil also mentioned, that would Apple pass on the benefits to the consumer is what matters, because you might get the benefits from the government, but are you able to pass it on to the consumers is what matters. We're hoping that during the sale we see those benefits, because whenever we're shopping abroad we see the price difference and we're like, wow,
Yeah.
this is a massive price difference, and the taxes and the kind of offers they are on is very different from India. So we're hoping that consumers in India also get those benefits. But I also see that the TDS rate on e-commerce was dropped from 1% to 0.1%. Would that also impact kind of our market, because most of our shopping happens on e-commerce websites? So that is something also I think would make a little bit of impact. But that is something that the e-commerce partners will again pass it on to consumers or not. That is something that we have to look at. But I think as you mentioned, the smartphone market, of course, chargers and all other things will definitely, most of the devices don't even come with it. So as a consumer, pennies for us.
Uh, Avneet, I wanted to understand, like, will these changes impact your business in some way? Because there is a reduction on PCBs, but is that applicable for you guys?
We are doing PCBs from last 20, 30 odd years now,
Yeah.
since CRT days, the conventional TVs that were there. So it is nothing new. That, as I told you, that the CKD business, anyone who is completely backward integrated is doing all these things from very long time. And if it's into this kind of business, and because since CRT days we're doing the same thing. In fact, that time BPL used to be there, and they used to manufacture PCBs. And I think the new generation doesn't even know that these circuits were built in India, by the way, that time. Everything, and had a very good quality, and much better quality that we were used to import. So it's nothing new. And then we are doing the CKD business from last about 5 years now. On CKD, custom duties are almost 1%. So on components, it differs from component to component. So it's not making any difference. As far as, I'm not from a mobile industry, but I can just tell you what I've heard yesterday. That it's just a tit for tat deal, that we are investing huge, one of the brands, and then 16 has to get launched. So the pricing, if you, so it's a very calculated risk, because a lot of buying has started happening on GST billing. You can take that and you save about 18%, 5% more. So you're a little competitive, so that the imports of phones are not there. Carrying of phones stop happening. Same happened with television also. If you remember, about 7, 8 years ago, people used to buy televisions, LCDs and LED from Dubai, Singapore, or Bangkok, and they used to carry. So they banned. Eventually, that will happen. Right now, I think you can carry one or two phones with you, and that will be more strict once it will be more competitive. And let me tell you, this Apple is very aggressive. They are, because I've seen last time what happened on the major sales. Uh, the credit card got blocked, because we just have about 2 to 3 crore credit cards available in the country, and starting from SBI and then HDFC. So there was an offer by HDFC, I think, last year. 30% of the cards got blocked. And apart from Apple, first day they could not sell anything. So that kind of craze was there. They will transform to customers for sure this year also, and they will give some lucrative deals.
I mean, there's a separate story around Apple and HDFC brewing. But let's, since we are at the final quarter of this chat, I want to ask a question to all involved out here, is that within this decade, will we see a phone or a television that's end-to-end manufactured in India, from silicon to software to LCD, PCB? A lot of those bits are starting to happen. Neil?
I don't think so. The short answer.
Okay.
Because if you look at from a phone perspective, or even a TV or any consumer electronics, like, so the bill of materials, what we call, which makes up
Yes.
the phone cost, right? So 40 to 50% comes from semiconductors, and those are advanced chips, memory, right? So those are coming out of just two or three fabs globally, right? TSMC or Samsung, or if it's PC, then it's Intel, right? And memory, obviously, there are three or four big players, and only now we are seeing the first memory fab from Micron coming in, but that is only for packaging. Not even that is the back end process, not even the front end process where we are etching the wafer, right? So it's just the packaging cost, which is again 10 to 15% of the cost of the memory chip. So overall value addition, I would say of the 55% of the BOM cost, we might achieve 10 to 15%, but not the entire 55%. So end-to-end manufacturing won't happen until TSMC comes in over here, or Samsung comes in and builds fabs. And we do have a display fab, but that is again not for the entire industry, for televisions or or for mobile phones or tablets, right? So end-to-end it's difficult, but I could say from manufacturing, we have achieved that at CKD level. We'll start adding more value. Right now, the value addition is at 18% of the total for mobile phone industry. We might go to 33%. And for comparison, China is close to like 45%. Vietnam is close to 40%. So even not China is 100%, because China also imports everything from Taiwan, TSMC, Samsung.
Yeah. Faisal, your thoughts?
Yeah, okay. So see, it's theoretically and practically, completely impossible that you'll have 100% out of one country.
Yeah.
It is very, very distributed, kind of value chain. Okay. Leave aside the hardware, even the software. Okay.
Yeah.
You have OS Android coming from, Google. Okay. So you use that. Then there are lots of codecs, okay, which come in from various licensees across the world. Okay. There are then enhancements like, for a simple one like Dolby. Okay. That's again not coming in from India. So point is you will never reach, achieve this 100% kind of localization. Okay. Not just in smartphone, but in many other electronics products. But yes, if we look at some of the mature markets or maybe markets which started this journey earlier, they are somewhere, hovering around 40-45%, which is maximum possible, and even after so much efforts. So yes, maybe in a decade's time, we may cross 30%, agreeing with Neil on that. And that should be, I think, the journey, how it is. And
Nikhil,
it also will
okay.
depend on how you want to, qualify what is completely built in India and all that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's also a
That's
point out there.
yeah.
I think we can only achieve a certain number, like mentioned by the other members of this conference. They are like, we cannot achieve 100% for sure, because there will be something or the other that we are dependent on another country. But what I want to see someday is like every Mercedes has a bit of India in it. And that's because the MBUX software they use is built by India. So if we can achieve something like that, like a software built for India, by India, at least every smartphone and every smart device is powered by something built in India. So something that we can achieve is that we can work on our software prowess. We can really compete with the bigger software companies, or have a part of it, like a major chunk of it being done in India. So that is something that we should look at achieving, not like 100%.
So just to round this off now, we are out of time. I just wanted to ask you guys this one final question, since the budget has happened. Generally, would we see more parity in the costs of gadgets, particularly smartphones and smart TVs? Yes, iPhones are coming soon. New iPhones are also coming soon. Would you expect them to get more expensive or similar pricing, or maybe if we are lucky, cheaper? Avneet.
Yeah, I'll just take 2 minutes. I'll just
Yeah.
make you understand about one decade what will happen. I'll just to give you a surprise that for TVs, I'm talking about televisions.
Yeah.
So there is a OS that has been developed in India, server in India, got all the permissions. I can't reveal the name. We have already tested. We're launching about 2 months. There'll be two brands which will be completely Indianized, and they have done a superb job. Second, as a fellow panelist said, that Faisal sir mentioned about Dolby. We're working with Dolby from last 2 years, completely Indianized. We have developed Dolby Audio, Dolby Atmos in India. This was the first time any TV brand has done that. Coming to display, we did a tie-up with Vedanta. about 4 years back, we signed a MOU. Because of their financial constraint, they could not develop a display panel factory in India. They were about to close it, but because of their constraint, I feel that 60 to 70% in next years is 100%. Otherwise, you'll not be able to survive in manufacturing because you'll not be competitive. No matter you'll ban, because if the costing, the BOM cost will differ at 20-30%, it will not make sense. Right now, it's about 7% that you do after all the CKD imports that you do. So if it reaches beyond 10-15%, assembly will not be viable. So they have to. It's a must that if you're thinking of Make in India, this has to be done. So 60 to 70%. Semiconductor, there are 4 new sign-ups that has been done in ministry. 2 projects have already been signed at Gujarat. And for the matter of the fact that the two mentioned, you can see in the wedding also, a lot of people have come in and they have come in and joined hands because something is happening. I'll not be able to tell you what exactly is happening, but something big is, there's a big announcement that may happen. So and coming back to the pricing, globally, raw material pricing is coming down because there is a slowdown. Despite of Euro, Copa America, and Olympics, sales of television was flattish. The Prime Day sale in US has been not so good. I feel that it will be foolish if the components will get expensive and the sales will go down. So therefore, it will be very aggressively priced to increase consumerism.
Okay. So, Faisal, Neil, quick in a minute or so, would you guys expect cheaper phones and what do you call more affordable consumer electronics later in the year?
Okay, so I'm not expecting, prices to fall. I think everybody will try to, sustain and retain the pricing. Nobody can, probably looking at the economic conditions, nobody will be in a situation to increase the prices. And at the same time, looking at the supply chain, I think the best would be to retain it.
Neil?
Yeah. From the pricing point, I think it will remain same. It doesn't matter nowadays because everyone is buying premium phones now. We are seeing this premiumization trend, and also the cost to buy this phone is reducing in a sense where there are a lot of financing schemes, cashback, trade-ins, which is alleviating the cost to access and buy these premium phones. So that is the trend which is actually working in favor of the industry. So I believe it doesn't matter if the phone price reduced by 5%, 10%. It can be easily covered by most of the consumers now looking to buy next expensive phone.
So now we are out of time. Thank you everyone so much for this enlightening chat about the budget and hoping for greater things to come in the consumer electronics space in India. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks a
you.
lot.
Good morning, everyone. And we're really sorry that, a few minutes were exceeded, but since the discussion was so intriguing, actually, we couldn't ask our spokesperson to actually cut them through. But nonetheless, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. The discussion over corporate ecosystem in Modi's 3.0 is now on the set of beginning. First of all, congratulations. Our budget is finally out. The budget 24-25 has actually addressed, several critical areas aiming to balance economic growth and fiscal prudence, social welfare, infrastructure development, environmental sustainability with, of course, industrial progress. Now, stakeholders across sectors are of the view that this year's budget will strive to support immediate economic recovery, but also lays a strong foundation on long-term prosperity. Mr. Yadav, since we have you on board and, considering that you are an expert into HR segment, we would like to know what are your thoughts on this year's budget? Something that you would like to elucidate on, certain things that were missing or certain things that you were very keen on addressing since they've not been addressed in prior budget. What is your take on this year's budget?
Yeah, good morning, Sugandh, and good morning to everybody. It's nice to get connected once again with you. See, this budget is in the line of what verdict Janta has given during the last Lok Sabha. So clearly, we can say Andhra Pradesh and Bihar, they have got the benefit of this. Now, if I look at from the HR angle, or from the employment and skill angle, the government has given the focus on the four areas. One is of course, the generation of employment, because unemployment was one of the issue in the last Lok Sabha, and inflation was another, farmers was another issue. So the government, this budget have tried to address the issue of employment, the skill, the middle class, and the MSME. These are the four major sectors where they have tried. Now let me touch upon the employment and the skill. So employment, one of the scheme, I would say, it is a very good scheme, which is the internship. So they have said that 1 crore youth will be, for the 5 years, they will be under the internship, and the government will spend 5,000 rupees per month on them. And company, but that is only for the top 500 company. Now, top 500 company had to be classified. By and large, top 500 company will be all the listed companies. So these are all the listed company, they will participate, and government will give 5,000 rupee per person, those who will go into internship. And the company which has got the CSR fund, out of that they can spend 6,000 rupee per month. So this is, I think, the game changer, because when you bring the internship, it has a dual benefit. One is that the person is getting working in a very large company, so getting a good skill, development the skill. And second, the pipeline of these 500 company also get benefited, because they get good people who has gone through the internship in the company with the subsidiary of the government, and also utilizing the CSR fund. So this is the game changer. The PF related, there are three schemes the government has come. The one scheme is, which is the manufacturing company, but the government is not very clear. They have said that they will be absorbing, they will give the incentivize towards the EPFO to the employer and employee both, but how much, what amount, and how they will do up to the 4 years, it is not very clear. But I think this also could be a game changer for the manufacturing company. The third thing they have said, that employer will get the benefit of 3,000 rupees as a reimbursement for the EPFO contribution for the first employment anybody gets. This is another third scheme which they have got. I think about 25 lakhs people will be benefited on this scheme. The other scheme which is there, which is anybody who gets the first job, so first month salary, there will be up to 50,000 rupee government will take care in a 3 installment. So the other EPFO internship related scheme, which is obviously it is going to generate the employment. But I think the rural area where, Manrega, which was last year was just about 60,000 allotment, this year they have increased to 85,000. So that is another game changer, because see, in India, if you look at, agriculture and the farmer constitute about 50% of the GDP. And we are almost very silent on that, that what do we do, because the agriculture and farmer area is the larger, where informal employment is there. The other thing is, so there we are silent, I would say. The MSME, which is almost about 6.8 crore MSMEs in India, and out of that about 12 crore job is created. In that also we are very silent, because out of the 12 crore job, which I would say almost 80% job people are on an informal. That means they don't get appointment letter, they don't get PF, they don't get ESI, they don't get other benefits. So I think government should have touched on this. So going forward, I'll contribute more, but I think up to this is what my observations are there. Sugandh.
Well, that's a great wrap up of what exactly, the budget spoke yesterday. But we should not forget that there has been a strong emphasis on women empowerment as well, with, women working hostels being set up by our, that's been spoken by our finance minister, Ms. Nirmala. Prem sir, my question to you, I would really like to know what are your thoughts on this. Do you believe that, providing hostel facilities will encourage parents to invest more in their daughters' education, their growth, since, it could elevate their concerns about sending their girls away to work or to study, or away from them actually? What are your views on the same? What is your take? What was the motive behind introducing a policy separately for, working women?
So, firstly, thank you so much, Sugan, for organizing this webinar. Very timely, very important, and particularly in view of the new and innovative programs which have been introduced in the budget. I think it's very timely, very important. Now, let me just give a little context. The participation of women workforce in India is still hovering around 30%. And that too, including the seasonal variations, which see a lot of peaks during certain period of time. And if you minus that, it will be much lesser, which means there is so much more that we need to improve if we have to get competitive and if we have to come on par with the global economic powers. That's number one. Number two, the girls staying in a different towns and without any proper accommodation, without any proper arrangements for parents, it's a very important question. I recall when my daughter went for a coaching in a different city from Mumbai, we had to make a lot of arrangements for her for providing PG, etc. And it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of. It's a concern. It's a serious concern. Now let me just give you an example. YCWA hostels. Why are they so full, and why are they so popular in all the cities wherever they are? Because they are able to provide safe accommodation to the girls, and it takes away a lot of worries from the minds of parents. Therefore, summing up, to me as a parent, as a citizen of the country, I see this as a very welcome initiative. It will take away a lot of worries from the minds of the parents, and it will ease up a lot of difficulties for women, for the girls, particularly when we are trying to make sure that we need to enhance the women participation in the workforce. So I see this as a very welcome initiative.
Fair enough. Finally somebody from the industry is actually speaking on, making certain provisions for working women, and understanding the plight of parents as well, as to why they do not want to invest or they do not want to send them out, since, let's not get into discussion of what the society is going towards. But still, Mr. Rao, I have my next question, my next, something that I want you to address. The incentives for job creation, is planning to scale 20 lakh youth over next 5 years, supporting for higher education loans and pushing women also in the workforce. Are we really moving towards a skill-based economy? Is it something that is a directive or a provision from the government's end to actually state and prove that, now that we have provisions and we are moving towards a skill-based economy, and, that something that can be built in people's head that, now we are actually working towards it? What is your take on the same? Or is it just another hoax or another policy just put in place for the name, but there is no action over how to actually plan to implement it?
Definitely. First of all, thank you so much, Sugan, organizing this. I got a great opportunity after a long time to meet with Prem sir as well. Thank you, Rajita and Yadavji, to participate in this one. See, in my point of view, definitely it's a great decision by the government moving on this. The reason why I'm saying this one is that Today, we face a lot of talent crunch in the hospitality sector. We don't have a skilled manpower. This dynamics changed the post-pandemic situations because the way pandemic is impacted us, everybody, then post-pandemic, everybody, the mindset of the generation and team completely changed. And based on that, today, though we are working with a couple of NGOs, like maybe Eco Center, Samardhanam Trust, even some of the youth for jobs, like even society for disabled, which is there in the Bangalore as well. Okay, and but still, we personally feel that definitely, there is a huge talent crunch, and we always feel a lot of difficulty to hire, especially like some of the jobs like housekeeping, like bartending, some of the jobs like even reservations. We feel a lot of challenges, and even like skill-based jobs like pastry, even bakery and confectionery, and these areas. But definitely, there is a huge crunch. But by giving incentives to the youth, definitely, it's one of the best welcome decision by the government, where we'll be able to bridge the gap based on the requirements. And I also want to add, like as rightly said by Prem Singh sir, he said definitely, in Indian women workforce is 30%, but in hospitality sector, we feel way low. Right now, I think on average hospitality sector, we have at 16 to 18%. We don't have much women workforce available in India. And though we have a lot of targets to work on, like we normally keep a 25% target, 30% target, we have a huge gap. So especially giving an incentives the youth, it will help us to bridge not only the gender diversity, even not only to fill the gap, especially on talent sources.
So since you've mentioned that there is not a good woman workforce, number in hospitality segment, any reason that you can elucidate as to why is it so, when we are seeing women coming in tech also and coming in different other fields, why not in hospitality?
See, by comparing with the IT, ITS manufacturing, I think Prem sir and Rajita ma'am will agree, because I always think that the IT, ITS and manufacturing roughly around 40-45% they have it. And when it comes to hospitality sector, though we have close to 100 colleges under government of tourism, like 100 colleges, roughly, let's say around 30,000 seats are available. Intake itself is an average is close to 16 to 18% students only opting for the hotel management colleges. So there is a big awareness is required here, especially that's the reason I think the government also is promoting skilled-based courses. That's the reason even the government also is given a lot of incentives for especially to promote the tourism sector as well, if I've seen in the latest budget. Because of that reason only, we are not able to have more than even 20%. On average, I think 16 to 80% across in India. But yes, if you look at even senior level, for example, I'm talking about general managers and above. On average in India, we have only 5 to 6% GMs are holding in across in India and hospitality sector. I'm talking about senior leadership team, GMs and above level. And below level, let's say ex-com and director level, on average is 20-22%. And below assistant manager is 16 to 18%. In sum up, an average hospitality sector is suffering a lot on 16 to 18%, but long way to go. But yes, each and every hotelier working very hard to get their fair share of talent to improve the women workforce at hotels.
Well, if you're working towards it, let's see by next budget discussion, we would have a number increased, spoken by you, that earlier when it was 16 to 18%, this year it is something different. We hope to, hear an increased number of women participation or women workforce in the hospitality segment. So, Rajita, welcome. It's a pleasure for us to be speaking with you after so long. But nonetheless, Rajita, Mr. Yadav had clearly spoken on, the aspect of internships the provision of internships being introduced in this year's budget. While promoting internships is actually new, something new that we've seen in budget this year, the youth has experienced, along with the provision of 5,000 internship allowance and 6,000 one-time assistance. Do you think that the landscape of internships will take a new turn now, as until now not many sectors have actually considered providing essential and skill-based internship programs? Do you think this will reap better professionals in numerous fields?
Thanks, Sugan, and I'm extremely honored to be a part of this panel today. I think let's back up a bit and kind of simplify what the government is trying to do, right? My view is that this time it's not just been an inside view of what India's done and what India needs to do. They have also looked at what's happened in other economies internationally and then picked up what has worked the best over there and kind of extrapolated that for India. So that I think is extremely commendable, from a which way the country wants to go and where we want to see, right? If we look at internships and how we essentially want how we want to promote internships, providing a financial allowance and a one-time assistance actually makes it more lucrative, and I will say it in Hindi. We are in India, our mentality is iske saath kya milega, ek ke saath ek free. So this is that to capture that mentality ki bhai, we are giving you a financial allowance and a one-time assistance, which is going to be great. Essentially, what it's going to do is, one is it's going to have a lot of openness to accepting this because it's providing financial support and it's also encouraging participation. So that's the one thing that it's going to do. The second is that, the focus is on skill-based internships, right? So the quality of internship that comes out of it, with the formalization of this as a policy, companies are going to have a lot more focused emphasis on outcome-based programs rather than just doing programs for the heck of it. And this way, it's meaningful both for the government, three ways: the government, the companies, and the youth that's coming in. And if you talk of, how industry is going to engage, I think industry needs to align a lot more with academia to come up with programs of what's going to work. The third aspect is development of professional skills, right? There's going to be hands-on experience upfront and then soft skills of professionalism as well. I still remember my first job, I came, so this is not going to be college, right? Grow up, you've entered the corporate world. So internship, in a very beautiful way, gives you that year's buffer or 6 months buffer to understand how you're going to do and how you're going to transition into that. It's like, your dating period in that sense. If you look at, the fourth aspect is bridging the education and employment gap. I mean, this topic has been beaten to death, a couple of years, that I don't have 51% of the youth in India is not. Okay, कोई बात नहीं, but हम बोल लेंगे. So it is about, bringing 51% of them are unemployable immediately. So how do you improve that quality and how do you give a pathway for employment as well? Like Srinivas mentioned that hospitality may, you don't have too many people. I think the most important is creating jobs. While you have the supply, how do you create meaningful jobs is what's going to be important. The last and most important on the internship aspect that I'd like to call out is long-term impact on professional standards. It's raising, the way we as a country are viewed as professionals with regards to innovation, productivity, and aligning with global practices as well. There's a lot that's spoken about the education system and why so many people from India, so many kids from India want to go out because the learning system is different. So this, in a way, actually complements it. And that's, I think this initiative has a lot of potential. And hopefully, if applied the right way, we should get where we want to get.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your lovely inputs and your expertise that you've spoken on different aspects. Let's just, since we have time crunch and there is a lot more to discuss, but still, I would begin with, taking key takeaways from every one of you as to understand, if we were to wrap up this session, if we were to, have a synopsis to it, what exactly would be the takeaways from each one of you? We could begin with Prem, sir. something that you would want to lay emphasis on, and make people aware as to what exactly could be a picture 10 years from now, 4 years from now, 5 years from now?
Sure. So fundamentally, Sugandh, the way I look at it, the budget is trying to address the fundamentals of the economy. For example, it is addressing the rural sector by way of infrastructure spend, plus agriculture, because there is a lot of focus in trying to provide support to the farmers, farmer organizations for developing new varieties, high yielding varieties. A lot of support on that front. On the urban side, there is a lot of focus on urban infrastructure plus industries, both in manufacturing and service sector. Third, a very important focus, and rightly so, for youth, women, and the tribal communities, which so far have not been adequately focused. Fourth, there is a lot of focus on technology, for example, digital. There is a lot of focus on trying to upskill people, youth, making sure that the youth which is entering the workforce is adequately professionally skilled. The internship scheme that we spoke about is a very welcome step. Fourth, the MSME sector, which is responsible for generation of employment to the extent of 35-36%, and which is also responsible for about 24-25% of the GDP of the country, has been focused adequately. And I see this as a very welcome move, because until you address that as a key pillar, it's very difficult to move the economy of such a large country. Final, the youth, which is, again, I would like to emphasize it. Today, the workforce that we have, 17.5% of our population is in the age group of 15 years to 24 years. And this group, if we don't engage them meaningfully, we may end up with a serious social problem. So the skilling program, the internship program is therefore extremely important to make sure that we meaningfully engage this population. At the same time, we also upskill this workforce. That's all from my side.
Thank you so much, sir. And mostly I see you've summed up almost everything. So now we move on to Mr. Yadav. Please, I would request everyone to not take more than 30-40 seconds, since we are running short on time and we do have other panelists also waiting. I know the discussion is to go along because there is a lot to discuss, but still, please do not take more than 30 seconds.
Okay, Sugandh, so I won't take more than 30 seconds. See, I think so far we have been more vocal on in terms of corporates, young people, MSME, and then this. But in coming 10 years, which I visualize, India landscape, 50% population is from the villages and the farmers and the agriculture. 50% of the GDP contribution is from the agriculture and the farmers. But this is the area which is, I would say, less addressed. Farmers are not taxed. 50% population is not taxed. And as a result, today, only 2.6% population is paying the tax, which is just about 1.6 crore people are paying the tax in India, which is not right. In our assembly, 1/3 of the people, politicians, they classified as a farmers and they're out of the tax. Even Shah Rukh Khan's daughter, Suhana, has termed her as a farmer by buying a land, and she's not paying the tax. So going forward, in my opinion, government has to give importance in terms of creating a job among the farmers. Creating a job means already job is there, but I think formal job in the farmer area, which is not there because the larger number of people are informal. As a result, they don't get any PF, ESI, retirement benefits and advantage, and also the taxes are not coming from that area. So there's a few, I think the landscape is going to change in the next 10 years.
Mr. Srinivasa, what's your take on the same? Anything extra that you would want to add to it? Something that's already been spoken on?
Exactly. Rightly said by Prem sir and Mr. Yadavji. Actually, in this budget, what we are looking at is there is an unemployment, definitely there is a talent crunch, and what we are looking at on opposite side is that yes, we have a youth, and definitely to build the youth in terms of internships and to generate the employment. Right, I think we are in the right track of in the right way approach right at the moment. I think by looking at today, I think next 5 years and 5 to 10 years, definitely there is a chances of reducing the unemployment, because we are focusing more on skill development and internship. And I personally feel definitely there is a huge reduction in unemployment. That's what I believe in that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Srinivasa, for a very crunch and a mere addition to what's already been spoken on. Rajita, your turn. You
I'm not
actually
gonna
have to see what what all key takeaways you can actually add to it, since we've spoken at length about everything and anything.
I'm not going to repeat, and I'll take 15 seconds. Okay. The budget for me this year is like roti kapda makan, back to basics.
Okay.
You're taking care of defense, you're taking care of employment for everybody, you're ensuring everybody has food, so everyone's taken care of. And I think it's a very well thought through one. Let's hope that we're able to execute and implement as well.
Thank you so much for the most crisp synopsis that you've given, since you know that we've spoken about anything and everything. Thank you so much, all the panelists, for shelling out time and giving your valuable inputs to this discussion and making it a very meaningful one. We do have a lot of key takeaways from this. Let's see, when we discuss the next year's budget, we can actually say that something that was spoken and promised in by the previous year's budget is, something that we've already moved on. Now there is a new road, new pathway, and hopefully by next year we'll have new additions to what is already being spoken on. Thank you so much, everyone.
Lovely catching up with my HR
Thank you,
colleagues.
everyone. Thank you so much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye.
so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Anand.
Can you guys hear me audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, hi, guys.
Okay, just give me a second.
I think there is some issue with the
Yeah, hi.
banner.
There's some issue. That is again the same. Everybody's names are mixed up.
Yeah.
I guess, yes. So who can help us? So Anag is fine. So Sunil is fine as well. But Abhishek Kumar and Vivek Banka, these two names need to be changed. Who can do that, please, for me? Is anybody out there? Just a second, huh?
Sure.
Anyways, we are running short of time, and
I think I can rename myself here. So let's see.
You can rename yourself. That'll be really wonderful.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
The
did
amount
that,
of stuff that's happening, I'm totally.
Yes.
Sunil
I
is
just renamed.
Sunil
You
is the
can
only
just.
one laughing because he's been named correctly. The others,
Well prepared.
there are two Anags here. So hopefully we should start very soon.
So let me drop and join back again. Oh, now it's
Sure.
Now it's
Please,
correct, I guess.
please.
No, I don't need to drop. I think.
Can you rename? You have renamed yourself already. Perfect.
Yeah.
Everybody is now fine. Wonderful. Okay. So we will start now. Okay. So in this session, hi everyone. In this session, we will we'll decode what the budget means for our personal finances. Right. There are a lot of stuff we hear. A lot of things about economy and stuff. But at the end, we need to know what the budget means for our personal finances, for our own money. So here we have three experts with us. I'll introduce them to you. First is Abhishek. He's a RIA and he's also the founder of Surge Money, a financial planning firm. Okay. Then we have Sunil Dasari. He is a tax expert and he's the CEO of Easy Tax, a tax filing portal. And of course, we have Vivek Banka. He's a founder of Goal Teller, an investment management firm. Okay. So I'll start here. as we know, yesterday there were not much about about taxes that we had expected. But I would like to start off with Sunil. Sunil, can you tell us what does the revised tax structure, the tax slabs for the new tax regime mean for the common man?
Yeah, hi everyone. Nice to be here, to be frank, actually, after a long time I'm in public.
Thank
So
you.
I think there is not a huge major change in terms of the tax slabs,
Okay.
the personal income tax in general, right? But it is a rejig to help particularly the people who are earning around like 7 to 10 lakh range, right? And
Okay.
there is a substantial benefit, not substantial, I would say like around like 17,000 or 18,000 rupee difference. And there is a family pension that was changed from 15,000 to 25,000. This is mainly for those who are, disabled or family pension, gainers, but not a huge change from the earlier one. I think the theme of it is to make sure that the tax simplification is one of the major agenda. In fact, I think if I'm following Nirmala Sitharamanji for a quite long time, I think it is on her plate for a quite long time, but she is really looking for an opportunity to make such a major change, right? I think the budget really means for a common man is to really understand what direction we are really heading for. I know it is not a very popular budget for a common person because not
Okay.
a huge
Okay.
change that they can see. But I think where we should really look for is that the budget is not only just in terms of the general tax perspective, right? But also really allocation of the funds indirectly, right? Getting a benefit to the common man, right? So that is another dimension that we need to look at. Generally, we always look at what is the tax structure and how it is going to benefit individual, etc. But there is a lot of upskilling, right? Initiatives that this budget is bringing, right?
Okay.
And there are other benefits that are now coming back to again another controversial subject a bit is about the capital gains tax, right? So
Yes.
this
Yes.
is
Of
an
course.
area where little confusion already exists in the in the media and everywhere. But I think once the gadget is available, right, passed, and when we see more clarity on it. But at this time, somewhere the it need to be balanced, right? For last three budgets, right, continuously we are giving little bit of incentive to the salary, though it is not sufficient, I would say. But the same thing need to be really acquired from some other channel, right? Which is really, unfortunately, it is on the capital gain side of the equation, right? So the short term rates have increased, and then long term also reduced, but indexation is not available, which is a major challenge for particularly those who are relying on the property side of the equation, right? And investors, and when you're selling the property, you will certainly see a little shock for a while. But the theme of the budget is actually the simplification of taxes, right? Now we are coming down to only two tax rates. One is 20% and is 12.5%. Going forward, it is going to be much easier, right? Being part of easy tax, and I think looking at so many portfolios over the time, I think the connect between a common person and the tax collector, which is the government, is missing over the time, right? Because the tax structure is very complex, very difficult to understand. We need to be there to translate what it really
Yeah.
means every time. See, it is really giving an example, right? If you know the product, you love to buy, right? Generally. If you don't know, you generally don't get in there, right? It's a compliance is not up to the mark, as we all know, right? Typical United States and Western world is around like 50, 45, needle around that. But for us, it is around like, 6.8 or 7.2%. It depends on whom you're asking. And then the actual taxpayer population is around like 2.8 to 3.1%. Again, it depends on whom you're asking, at what time you're asking. So I think this whole thing need to be revamped at certain time. I think this is a first step towards that.
Okay.
I think the bottom line is that for common man, it is not a sexiest budget, but I think the theme at which rate it is progressing
Yeah.
really reaps a lot of larger benefits at some point in future, in my view.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Sunil, for explaining things so well. So I'll open the floor now to Abhishek and to Vivek. Any of you can start first. So I would ask you, there been rationalization of the tax rates, right? Long-term capital gains. So you
Yeah.
both of you guys help people to, to kind of plan for the future in terms of the finances. So Abhishek, you could start, saying how does this affect, my long-term somebody's long-term planning for the future? Anything from the budget, and what is it that somebody should keep in mind? What has
Sure.
changed, with respect to the budget, with respect to long-term planning for future goals? And Vivek,
So,
once Abhishek is done, you can please add your inputs as well.
so I will borrow a quote where, I mean, someone wise said that tax and death are the only two certainty in life. So FM is using that to the maximum, where she's trying to rationalize the tax, but it has longer term repercussion on the goal planning or the investment planning one does. I mean, my general sense is that over a period of time, as Sunil was also referring to, there will be rationalization, further rationalization, and to a point where, I mean, old tax regime will be made redundant. So it always makes sense that we start looking at the future instead of looking at what has been the past and what has been, let's say, more so reasonable option in the past. So, I mean, I think one should start looking forward to plan their finances or their long-term savings based on the new tax regime, because sooner or later it is going to be so, let's say, disincentivized that old regime would not make sense at all. So there's been steps taken every year now and then, and it will get to that point in next few years, probably less than a decade, the rate at which it's going. So just to give an example, right? I mean, Sunil also spoke about that change in the LTCG on equity. So for people who are looking in absolute terms, it might just look like, okay, 10 to 12.5% is the increase, right? But I mean, if you consider, let's say, absolute term, it is 25% gain on the tax one was paying. So
You shared this on LinkedIn today, right? I was actually having a
yeah,
look at it. Yeah, yeah.
so people has to put it in perspective, not just look at it in marginal terms that, okay, this is what the increase is. If someone
Okay.
who's been planning their finances based on a large chunk of their portfolio into equity and then systemic withdrawal and all over a period of time, they should look at this way, that over a period of time, this is going to be further, let's say, not that lucrative going forward. So, I mean, the way I'm seeing it, probably down the line in a decade or so, the same level of taxation might be there in debt or, I mean, as well as equity. So we should plan with that in mind instead of just, I mean, giving more, let's say, uh, I mean, focus on, I mean, equity just basis the tax arbitrage that it had. That tax arbitrage will go, I mean, sooner or later. Whether you should have equity port in your portfolio to the risk level that you can, let's say, sustain. That is something that one should look in the longer term basis instead of just using tax arbitrage for quick gain, or let's say holding some security for 12 months and then, I mean, selling it out to make some gain out of that. So that's the way I'm looking in terms of future. Likewise, in terms of people, let's say, depending on, let's say, property for the long term, let's say, let's say, kind of an investment portfolio, they also have, I mean, kind of a shock. Although, I mean, there's a nitty-gritty which Sunil also mentioned that once the gadget is out, we'll have more details going forward. So there are lots of assumption going forward. I mean, these days, to give a sense, like there are some of the, let's say, simulation which says that if the holding period is, let's say, less than 10 years and the, let's say, per annum gain is less than 10%, then it's not going to be that beneficial. But it's the new regime is going to be beneficial only if the holding period is more than 10 years and the return on an annual basis is more than 10%. So, I mean, there are a lot of assumptions going around. So I'd not like to comment on that for now. I'll probably wait for the gadget to come and then, let's say, uh, suggestion about what one should be doing for, let's say, in terms of property for the retirement planning would make sense going forward. This is all I have to add at this stage.
Okay, thanks a lot, Abhishek. Vivek, coming to you, we already had, both our experts already speaking on this. What would be your view on, how to understand and read the budget for the common man, for his investment planning and goal planning ahead for the future?
One thing, Anand, that I have been very sure of over the last 3 months, the government is very clearly targeting short-term investors. So if you see the capital gains
Okay.
tax that has been increased, long-term has hardly been increased from 10 to 12%, of course. Some people might argue that's a lot, but I think in the larger scheme of things, it's not much. But the bigger change has been in the short-term capital gains, which is inched up from 15% to 20%. The STT increase on the F&O side. And by and large, I think they will start hounding people who are doing F&O trading aggressively. This is something which is very clear from the government that they want to go after people who are doing short-term investing. And they have been targeting this since the past 2, 3 months. There have been a lot of word around this from different ministries also. In terms of the exact implications for the common man on the street, I think for long-term investors, I don't think there is anything which has changed much. In fact, the budget, if you ask me personally, has been very positive. A lot of supply side issues, the issues of employment, etc., has been addressed. A lot of things which we don't see only in the tax side of things. A lot of non-tax issues have been addressed. The benefits of which might not be seen immediately. The benefits of which will be seen over a period of time, like we saw the bank account for everyone. We saw the benefits eventually of all of that. So I think for a long-term investor, we are fairly positive. I don't think one has to change anything as such in terms of their investment approach. Equities continues to be, in my mind, the best asset class for a 2 to 5 year period. The second thing is on the debt side, they have not changed anything. I would have preferred if, in the view of simplification, the debt funds also would have been got under the new tax regime of long-term and short-term. But unfortunately, that has not happened. I think the government is worried about a big loss of revenue, very rightfully so. So on the debt side, unfortunately, people do not have many options to invest into, which is the non-equity side. I think equity, because of that, will continue to do well. Thirdly, there's one big thing that we were expecting, which has not happened, is the change in taxation of arbitrage funds. So a lot of people right now use arbitrage funds as a substitute to bank deposits, liquid funds, and debt funds. They have been giving returns of 7 to 9%. There, the taxation is taxed as equity. So I think that is something which will continue to be used by a lot of individuals to use for the non-equity investment. Unfortunately, apart from this, for the short-term investors, I think the writing is on the wall that the government over the next few years will keep, pinning their existence and try to tax them more and so that's broadly my view. I think I'm fairly positive on what has happened. I don't think any changes needs to be done in terms of where the investments are happening. Lastly, on the real estate side, there is an indexation benefit that has been removed. Of course, the capital gains tax has been also reduced from 20% to 12.5%. So if you see mathematically, for people who are making lesser amount on real estate, 5, 6, 7%, they would not have paid any tax because of the indexation covering that gain itself. Ironically, the next decade, I feel that returns from real estate, especially more on the tier 1 cities, will be more muted. So people on this side, on the tier 1 cities, etc., who will make 5, 7% returns, I think they will have to pay a tax of 12% on that. So that is an extra tax which they would have, under the old tax regime, would not have been liable to. Having said that, I do not think that will make any difference in the way people buy or sell properties. The only thing is, I hope the government does not take this every year, compounding this thing of increasing the capital gains, of increasing the tax on real estate. I hope that does not happen. As of now, I think it is at a situation where investors will take this under their stride and move on without any tangible impact either in real estate markets or on the equity market.
Okay. Okay. Thanks a lot. Could you just add a point on the changes in NPS rules that has happened? One is the NPS account for the minor, right? So could you comment? Would you want to comment on that?
Yeah. So NPS, I think they have, of course, they are trying to make NPS more and more attractive with the minor account also being allowed there, where as a as a parent, I can gift my kids, and then that can be
Yes,
transferred
yes.
to his account when he attains maturity. From my perspective, if you ask me from a personal finance perspective, again, Abhishek can give his views here, but we do recommend NPS for a certain set of people, but we aggressively recommend it for people beyond the age of 35, 40. The problem
Okay.
is that liquidity is very low in this, especially considering the fact that you see any side of money only at the age of 60, at which also you have only an option to take out 60%, and the rest comes in as an annuity. So, my bigger request to the government is here, and I think for which, sorry, I got a call from. Uh,
No problem.
so, I think a lot of lobbying has been happening to increase the choice of annuity portion and the
Yes.
lump sum portion at the age of 60. I think that is a deterrent for people to invest into it. Plus, I think there should be more cases where individuals should be able to withdraw that fund earlier. This is in measure a social security benefit that the government is trying to provide, but it's, in my mind, not there truly right now. From a tax perspective, of course, there are other perspectives in terms of costs, etc., which are beneficial in the NPS. A lot of benefits that you can change between equity, debt, etc., without a tax impact, at least right away. So those benefits are surely there on the NPS. But right now, my stronger request to make NPS much, much more widespread and beneficial would be to take out or increase the lump sum withdrawal limits at the age of 60. So that's my thought on the NPS. But NPS is a great vehicle. You know, you get an immediate benefit to the extent of the tax benefits that you get. I think people should maximize it.
Thanks a lot. Okay, we'll have to round this up. We started 5 minutes late, so I'm assuming we can end 5 minutes late as well. So Abhishek, you just round up your thoughts in a bit, and then we'll come to Sunil, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, so I echo the sentiments of Vivek. That's it's I mean kind of a budget which is not that bad and which is not that good. So it's kind of a right spot right now. But over a period of time, I mean, we have to see the path that the government, I mean, this and the next and so on and so forth would follow. I mean, rationalization of taxation is, I mean, very much required right now. As Sunil was saying that a expert is needed where which particular regime to select. I mean, over a period of time, this should get streamlined and simplified so that, I mean, people do not get confused while, I mean, choosing an investment one over other. So it's a progress, but I just hope they don't keep on accelerating the, I mean, capital gain tax and so on and so forth every year. I mean, that will probably reduce a lot of, let's say, investment which is coming this way. Although the markets are at, I mean, lifetime high due to a lot of liquidity because we are in right spot. There's not much of inflation. The interest rate are benign. But if that changes, I mean, we know that flow would determine the liquidity in the market and then the kind of evaluation we are getting. So that is, I mean, a temporary phenomenon, I believe. Over a period of time, people look for certainty, and that should come from the government.
Okay, and Sunil, will come to you now. The point is the last 10 years, people have been expecting the ATC, thing to be ATC limit to be expanded, right? I mean, hundreds of columns and stories on that, right? But we're seeing that we're moving away from that, right? We're moving away from the old tax regime. So, Sunil, like your final thoughts, like to sum up what you said, that people should, look at it in a like, overall perspective, not in the sense of how much am I benefiting in terms of taxes, right? Like, could you just round up, please?
See, this is the third term government, right? They can do pretty much anything that they feel comfortable. But what they chose in this budget is to think long term, right? For long haul, right? And they're thinking that way actually, right? If you really look at the path for last 4 or 5 budgets, bringing new tax regime, why they're bringing new tax regime? Because if you really look at around the world, except Paris, I mean, France and a couple of countries, right? Major countries. You know, the government simply deducts taxes or employer deducts taxes and just move on. Rest of the things are pretty much managed by the individual, right? But this is a country we are following a legacy where we are incentivizing somehow or the other to buy certain products. I think this choice or this habit of a structured investments within the same salary, right, is not a great situation, right? I think the government is, periodically, I think every budget they're making, they're moving towards the new tax regime where the investments are going to be done by the individual rather than incentivizing them, right? So that is one. The other thing is that I think the capital gains related aspect is an initial shock. In my view, I think I agree with the rest of the panelists. It is not going to really break anything, right? I think few days from now, everything is going to be normal in my view. But there, it is a sentimental thing, right? And if you really look at property market versus stock market, the property side of the equation is fairly sentimental. I don't think people are going to just look for the taxes and buy property, real estate. But it is going to take some time. Actually, there is a clarification that I want to give is that if you purchase a property before 2001, there is still indexation today, right? As part of the latest information.
Yeah.
And post 2001 onwards, that is the pretty much the latest investment that you have done. For that, it is the no indexation applies with 12.5%, right? So I think that we need to get more information from the government through the gadget, and then I think we can translate down properly. But I think I'm really looking for keeping this pace continuously for next couple of budget or something like that, and then making sure that and another important point is that this budget is pretty much covering everything, right? I mean, there is a rural sector, agriculture. I mean, like after a long time, they're focusing on that. Then after a long time, they're focusing on the skills. They're long. See, these are all different things that are going to come back to the taxpayer some way or the other, right?
Exactly.
I think it is for long haul. I think it'll be a good journey going forward, I think. Yes.
Okay. And finally, Vivek, you have a minute or so to sign off,
Sure,
please.
sure. So I'll sign up saying that I think people are overly worried about the taxes at this minute of time. No point of speculating what will happen in future and spending, wasting energy and time on that. I think the budget has been good. I guess the steps which are taken, if it's implemented properly, I think will lead to better economic gains and then hence better returns both on real estate and equities for individuals. So the post-tax returns will still be better. So I think fretting about smaller things right now is futile because anyways we are resigned to this fate. And let's hope that whatever the government has said is implemented well so that we see a better denominator in terms of return.
Okay, we'll sign off now. Thanks a lot to all of
Thank
you
you.
for joining us in such a busy time.
Thanks,
And
everyone.
in the next issue of Business World, please kind of tune into that because we'll be covering these aspects in a lot more detail. So, bye everyone. Have a nice day.
Bye.
Thanks
Bye.
for having us. Thanks to all the
Thank you.
panelists.
Bye.
Yeah.
You're on mute, Vishal.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Perfect, perfect.
Yes, Rishma.
A lot has already been said about budget. A lot has been written since yesterday. It has been a balanced budget. But today in this discussion, we will discuss the long-term implications and impacts this budget will bring in. Clearly, for startups, it has been a dream budget with the announcement of removal of angel tax, the FM bringing in parity between domestic and foreign investors. I mean, a lot of veteran investors, a lot of industry captains has kind of thanked finance minister, applauded the budget and its announcement for startup ecosystem. We will discuss the removal of angel tax and its implication, but more so, we will discuss what has been missed out in the budget. What were some of the expectations that were unanswered, unaddressed? So I'll come to each one of you for your initial thoughts and tell us in a little bit of detail what kind of implications the removal of angel tax will have on the startup ecosystem for investors and founders as well. Can we start with Sudhirji?
With me? Sorry. Yeah, I think, basically tax matters are always, unfortunately, left with room for interpretation all the time, and then they get into a dispute zone. Clarifications such as the one that's been pronounced yesterday are important because basically the notion of a fair market value could well be the price at which a transaction takes place. And you can use that as an FMV. But you have differences of opinion on what is a fair market value and what is a transaction price. And hopefully this theoretical income in the hands of a company that receives it, which is really, it's receiving capital. The intent of the angel tax was much more to actually curb specific transactions that were happening to really, wash certain transactions. That is how it originated. They've removed it, and it actually opens up the fact that there are 100,000 startups with DPIIT. It opens up the ability for angel investing, seed capital, the rest of it to come. So yeah, welcome.
Good to know, and we understand it's a very welcome move. Now, Karan, in your opinion, what will be the different implications of this removal? Yet we are yet to understand what are the nuances of this announcement, in detail. But your initial thoughts on this, and what changes do we expect?
So I think, look, it's a lot of it will really depend on the fine print, as is the case with such matters. But I think if you look at it from a macro perspective or just areas which could benefit, I think one is just the uncertainty of the overall tax. I think the second is it will free up a lot more capital to come in at the earliest stages, which was, I don't, it is my personal views, I don't think it was constrained, but there was always a feeling of, look, uncertainty, and uncertainty is what drives lack of action. It will also, I think, help a lot of non-resident potential investors, come in much earlier, which has not been the case, at least for this asset class for a period of time, which is a good thing because then you have much more diverse pools of capital coming in. I think the biggest one big miss in this one at least has been if you have to have a wish list. Ideally, it would have been good to have some sort of this would have been a positive retrospective move had that been put in place. But then it's a question of how long back can you go, right? Is it 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? I think that's hard to draw the line. Besides that, I think getting parity on the taxation on capital gains with listed equities is significant. I know IBC has been working for a long time with the Ministry of Finance and other bodies. So I think we're, as a group, very happy on that. And the overall emphasis on just, I think folks have said this before, on job creation, skilling, but also the ability to get capital into sectors like space and agri and climate and really identify, without giving it a mandate, but actually identify what are the priority sectors within each of these. I think those are 3 good moves that we think could have fairly immediate impact once they're actually implemented.
Good to listen to you, Karan. In the second round, I'll come back to you and to understand what was missing in this budget. I know that there are good moves that made the whole startup ecosystem happy, but what were some of the things that were missed? Mitesh, I'm coming to you. He mentioned about the long-term gains and short-term as well. Apart from that, your thoughts on how angel tax removal will impact the investors, or how will it encourage foreign investors to come in and invest in Indian startups?
Great. Thanks, first of all, for having me here. I have a little different perspective about budgets, right? I think year after year, we look at budgets for the first 2 days, in great eagerness and introspection, looking at each and every small provision and all. But if you recall, last 10 years or something, you'll not remember what has changed in terms of the tax rate by 5%, 10% here and there and all, right? So I think personally for me, and this is my view, is that I always like the macroeconomic indicator more than the smaller changes. What's heartening to see here is, the lower guidance on fiscal deficit, overall increase in capital expenditure, right? Promotion of women entrepreneurship, promotion of some states, right? And a lot of the other things around the overall sentiment of the budget that really excites me. And I think that's what I'm pretty happy about. The way, no two thoughts about, in the direction which we are going. Emerging is a very strong economy, right? And some great, projections over there as well. So I think that is something which excites me more than any of these other transactional announcements. Now, coming to transactional announcement, I think angel tax abolition is like coming from a negative to neutral. But it speaks a lot of the intent part of it, right? So I think in terms of the intent, at least to have a provision which was actually creating a lot of uncertainty. While it didn't deter any of the investments into the startup ecosystem, to be honest, being a leading early stage investor, at IPB, we can see that there is still a lot of interest, but I think some of these tax moves can really simplify life, and the overall mindset and approach towards early stage investment. So definitely from that perspective, it's a very, very welcome step. What needs to be seen now is that how the tax department also approaches this, and how in effect it converts where the litigations are actually reduced, and we are not stretching it, to look at the definition of it by words, and again kind of taking out something else. So I think it's that percolation of this intent on the ground that is something which will be interesting to see. I think you're on mute, Karishma. Can't hear you. No.
Can't hear you. Rishabh, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Very surprising. A couple of minutes ago, I was all audible, but leave it aside. Now, 12 years ago, it was brought in to address the scope of money laundering cases or to address the unaccounted money that goes here and there. Now, with the removal of this or abolition of this, we get to understand the nuances and details. But Sushma, what are your views? Do you see a scope of, some negative cases happening or governance going for a toss? How are you seeing this? Can I have a view from a different perspective?
No, thanks so much for inviting me here today. Just quickly, directionally, I think it was a good budget because I think they said all the right things. And also some of the indicators or some of the points that have been spoken about clearly indicate their move towards ease of doing business. Ease of doing business both for startups as well as for capital allocators and investors like us, right? As many of the points discussed have already covered those. And when you're saying that, could there be irregularities? There will always be some rotten apples, right? And people are always trying to find loopholes in any structure. But I think the intention of, the tax parity that has been brought in, the abolishment of angel tax, is to ensure that there is ease of business. One, from the investor's perspective as well, and also from a compliance requirement that startups had to go through for angel tax. That kind of comes down. Now, it is done with the right intentions. Now, whether people use it in perverse ways, that is to be seen, and I'm sure there will be ways of correcting it.
On the governance aspect, that's a whole different topic altogether. That is for people, for everyone. Everyone is responsible to ensure that there is good quality governance. I don't think a budget in itself can ensure that you move in a certain direction there. But if you were to ask the wish list of things that we had, as part of the industry body IVC as well, we had put forth a bunch of requests. Some of them have obviously, like the angel tax, which has been in the making for a long time, has finally been approved. So that's great. A couple of other areas that, we were hoping to see some movement in was on the reverse flipping aspect. And that was I think there was silence on that front. And maybe going forward, we will get to hear more positive things there. One of the big areas that I think was a big win for our industry was also the fact that they've created 1,000 crore fund for space tech startups. And I think India is at a position that, it can become an innovation leader in space tech space. We already own close to 77 space assets, and it can only grow from here. So with the right talent, the right policy, and with the right capital, that's another big win for us in directionally from a budget perspective.
Good to know, Sushma. I'm coming to you, Mohit, quickly. Angel investor yourself, how happy are you right now? And for you, how encouraging is this move? More so, tell me your take on how will it kind of encourage more irregularities, or how, what can be the ways that can be introduced later on to kind of curb that in place of angel tax?
So as a recent angel investor, but more importantly, as someone who spent 6 years as a founder building a business and then selling that business, I'm actually very pleased with this budget. I think two factors. One is I have lots of friends, colleagues, founders who've got a lot of notices on the angel tax front, which always seemed very, very unfair. So hopefully that gets resolved. I think it gives action to what the government has been saying, which is we want to promote startups. This is a step to actually give it, right, in the hands of the founders, saying, yes, you shouldn't worry about litigation coming your way. And it's a good relief. Founders, I know, are breathing a heavy sigh. So that's one on the comfort side of it. I think one on the positive side of it, if you look at unlisted shares, which is how essentially a founder makes wealth, right? I am dedicating my entire life over many, many years. The way I will make money at some point of time is shares in the company I get bought either through an IPO, but far more through a secondary or to another investor, right? I've been on the receiving end of it a little bit, where in the year one of our sale, which was 2021, I effectively paid 28.5% of tax on that transaction. That was huge, and it obviously seemed very unfair as compared to a listed equity, right? I'm actually taking far higher risk than a listed equity as a founder. I don't know if these shares are in 99%. My shares that I've created will amount to nothing. And when they do amount to something, in that rare one case, I pay 28.5% tax compared to a 10 plus cess at that time. I think it is fantastic having been brought into parity. I've actually done share sales all 3 years as a part of my acquisition. So I've gone from 28.5% tax to 24.5% tax, and this year, hopefully 14-15%. Right. So I think it is another step which is a lot less spoken about, but really the government is saying, look, we want to encourage founders, encourage startups. And if you do the right things in the right fashion, hopefully at the end of it, there is something at the end of this dark tunnel of entrepreneurship, right? That wealth will be taxed on par with everything else. So I think that's a huge benefit, a lot less spoken about, but actually the fact that being on the receiving end, I'm happiest and out as founders, all right, breathe a sigh. Hopefully at the end of this, you will make 10% more than you would have otherwise. That's a huge shift.
Certainly. It has brought in cheer for a lot of founders and investors. Now, before we jump on to our final leg of our discussion, I want to come to Sudhiji. Given that you invest in deep tech and space tech, there was a fund announcement that was made yesterday, 1,000 crore fund for space tech. How are you seeing that? Give us the broad contours of how deep tech, space tech segment will evolve in India in next 3 years.
Yeah, I think we have no doubt that we need to create.
A little louder.
No, there's no doubt that we need to create more Indian deep tech early stage companies, mainly because we've got to we have our own sovereignty in this area that we need to protect. These are typically long gestation, high risk areas. That's why it's called deep, because it is long gestation and it possibilities of not failure, but like if you look at space tech, just being space grade is a completely different kettle of fish. Not much is proven, and therefore lots of cycles of effort have to be backed. And so 1,000 crores is a good start. It's a small start, but it's a good start. We definitely need more, and maybe we should be thinking about anything that is deep in nature, whether it's research and development oriented, or the time to market is longer, basically long cycle. So as we progress on defining deep tech, it'll be great. Space is one of the things that we need in aerospace, in aviation, in defense, in medical technologies, in biotechnology, genomics. So there are a lot of areas that we believe as investors in deep technology, there's need to build the technology stack that is relevant in our economic environment, which is, at the end of the day, we're still a $2,000 per capita median income, right? So to be able to create stuff for ourselves, we have to rethink everything grounds up. And that will then allow us to actually file new forms of patents that cater to new materials, new ways of looking at it. So yes, the budget does talk across, if you look at within the science and technology spectrum, there have been allocations given to each of the areas, whether it is for S&T itself, space, so on and so forth. So overall, we see that there has been, we could do much more, right? So if indeed we need to be able to bolster our own ownership over patent pools and IP that has to be built in India, then we reckon that what is started is good, but definitely significantly more investments are expected. Now, we did have an announcement of 100,000 crore set aside, but our understanding was it put like a deep 50-year debt fund. What we were looking forward to was some kind of allocations to equity, because this is an equity funding sort of cycle that's required. What's also good is that I think they're going to put in more centers around the country to allow for more incubation and more advanced manufacturing. So they've thought through a bunch of areas that will lead to action. But yeah, as it pans out, to Mitesh's point, I think the macro trend to encourage entrepreneurship, to encourage innovation, to encourage own manufacturing capabilities, to building new products that have to come. Because right now, let's say the startup sector has about 1 million employees. We certainly need to contribute to 10 million employees. And if our biggest concern is employment, we would want the investment climate to become smooth, also bolstered alongside with government capital expenditure and allocation of funds. And then, of course, private participation will increase.
Thank you, Subhiji. Now, take 1 minute each, and I go around the room to listen to what was missing in the budget that you were expecting. What is that one thing that was missing, but you were expecting it? Just one thing. I'm giving 1 minute each. Anybody can start. Mohit, you would like to?
Who's the ranker?
Mohit, would you like to?
My dream wish would be if they said angel tax, all past litigation is also resolved and put to dust. Right? Let's get all of those founders over the last 10, 12 years who borne the brunt of it. Let's give them some relief as well.
I think I don't think we can call it missing. Overall, I'm sure they have a lot of things to balance out. There is growth, there is social sustainability, and a lot of other things. I think if I were to just kind of say, if while there has been an intent to promote entrepreneurship over here, removal of angel tax, bringing capital gain tax at par with listed securities and all. I think a little bit more push towards creating some more startup dedicated funds early stage to promote people and entrepreneurship at ground level, right?
Any sector specific?
No, I don't want to be sector specific. I think each sector deserves equal attention and should be promoted equally. But anybody who's promoting entrepreneurship over here, right?
So yeah, more funds. So you wanted more funds. Sushma, quickly.
Yeah.
Sorry, as I mentioned, I think if there was some clarity on how to bring back companies that are registered outside of India back to India, on the reverse flipping side, that would definitely be some area that we would be watching.
I can see Sudhirji nodding. Sudhirji, what was missed?
No, I agree with her. I was just agreeing to that. You can please go around the table. I'll come back.
Can't hear you properly. Can't hear you properly.
I said I was agreeing to what Sushma was saying. Reverse flipping is also an important aspect. We saw a lot of flight of companies getting funded overseas. Given the fact that our capital markets are really robust in their structure, in their architecture, the secondary markets have been welcoming, companies to actually get listed. Over the last 2 years, we've seen that significant flow. We should be seeing more flip into India. And I was just sort of endorsing what Sushma said.
Definitely. In my view, I was expecting a lot more attention on EV, climate tech, but that remained unanswered. Karan, what was missing out?
I think you mentioned something on EV. So I think there were conflicting reports on whether the next FAME policy would be announced as part of the budget or separately. But we're hoping that it does come out after, in subsequent announcements. That will be critical because I think it's beyond the scope of it needs to get expanded into larger commercial vehicles as well. And if there is serious intent on getting to higher adoption on EV, there is a whole lot more that needs to be done for the overall ecosystem, not just the vehicles themselves. That was one. I think the second was there was some mention on the digital public infrastructure, but in broad terms, from what I could make out, I think going a little bit deeper on that, especially on areas like healthcare, which has been talked about in the past, fairly recently, I think that would have been encouraging because it's worked well for obviously on UPI, and early results on ONDC have been encouraging, but it's still early. Similar efforts probably need to be put on healthcare because at least that was the understanding that it would be the next focus. So probably those two things would be great if there are announcements that come by subsequently.
Thank you so much. I must thank you for your time, for your insights. With 3-4 big announcements for startup ecosystem, it indeed is a dream budget. Please go for it, Sudhirji.
Yeah, I saw something that I think I would have sought, and it can come later, is AI infrastructure. Treat it like an infrastructure requirement because it's deep compute requirements, and sort of a government could think about it because you need your data sovereignty. And this is something that you can have 1 million developers working and become the models, because India will have more velocity and volume of data than
certainly
most parts of the world, which we could build models, and then that could be actually a big piece of the service infrastructure that should be created.
Certainly. We will be engaging you in more of such discussions. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
So, welcome to BW Businessworld and BW Healthcare World. Welcome. Are you guys able to hear me? Welcome, Dr. Arvind Lal, Mr. Sunil Kurana. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, Arvinder. Thank you very much.
Awesome, awesome. It's such a pleasure to have you with us. Today, just yesterday the budget was announced. The government has allocated about 89,287 crores for developing, maintaining, and improving the country's healthcare system, which is just marginally higher than what was there earlier. The government has also allocated about 2,143 crores towards the PLI for the pharma industry. Now, the reason we want to speak to you is because of your experience and your involvement in the healthcare industry at such a deep level, to understand from you what does this budget mean. We've got varied views. So let's begin with Mr. Sunil Kurana. Sir, you've been very, very vocal about the Make in India, the impact it has, what we need as to do as a country. The budget has proposed a very basic customs duty, which has been removed or lowered for X-ray tubes and flat panel, detectors. How will these change or affect the production and pricing of medical imaging equipment in the country?
Thank you so much, Harinder ji, and hi, Brigadier Saab. It's
Hi,
good to
Sunil.
have
How are
you.
you?
Very good,
Nice
sir.
to
Very
see you
good.
again. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Harinder ji, this X-ray tube or X-ray flat panel, I will say welcome move without any doubt, because it was at 15% and it has been brought down to 5%, with the clear mandate that every year it will go up, and by third year it will again go back to the same level of 15%. So so that those components or lower sub assemblies come at a lower price and your overall penetration becomes better. But what I want to tell you here is that medical devices is about $13-14 billion today. And if I look at only X-ray scope, is only 4,000 crores. It's not a big deal. It's a very small number which we are actually attributing. What, in my view, has been missed here is that the very similar approach should have been for medical devices already being manufactured in India. There are a lot of products which companies are manufacturing, including consumables, including ECGs, syringes, patient monitoring, and many such products. So we should have actually done something for those products. And in my view, what is missing is it doesn't really matter at all that you raise this basic custom duty, which is mostly for most products at 5%, going up to 10 or 15%, because when it is coming from China, which is a low-cost country, the entry barrier has to be slightly better. They generally use a local Chinese components. Cost of making is very low. And if those products are coming still at 5% custom duty, that is not going to help us ever. So I have been always requesting that some entry barrier should be raised so that local manufacturing can get a little bit motivated. You just touched about PLI. PLI for medical devices is on since 2020, and it's doing well. We have now 2 applications out of the 4 registered under PLI, and we have built our new factory in Bangalore under that initiative. So that way, I think it was very good. But this is what I felt has been missing, and we have to see fine prints. Maybe down the line, some more information comes, because this is just a basic information and big information. You can't, in probably 85 minutes time, everything cannot be said. But directionally, I think it's a good budget.
Dr. Lal, with these proposed changes in the custom duty for medical equipment, especially for X-rays, do you think it's a step forward and we could see the impact on the cost and availability of diagnostic tools and technologies in the future? Because, we have a challenge as a nation in terms of the access to diagnostics in tier 3 and rural areas. What is your view on this?
Well, absolutely, you are right. You hit the nail on the head. This is a step in the right direction, first of all, that the government trying to import a few things at lesser duty so that their manufacturing can be taken up on a larger scale. But the bigger picture is that what happens to the
the trade deficit between India and China, which is about $100 billion. So this is actually very small amount, which, we, of course, anything from my side to keep the Chinese out is very welcome. And I'll never mince my words on that. But whatever is, required for you for manufacturing here, well, you must import, then you must import. And the second thing which I can say, which has also happened, is that the Department of Pharmaceuticals has witnessed about a 50% increased allocation, and which will help make India the pharmacy of the world. Well, they are already calling us the pharmacy of the world, but it will become better. And if you remember, and if everybody who's attest to that, the APIs in India are actually being manufactured in a dismal kind of amounts. China is still holding the big APIs, and why Indian companies, the drug companies have not gone for APIs manufacturing in a big way. But API is the active pharmaceutical ingredient which is required for so many other drugs. And so that's my take on the import, Harvinder.
And sir, when we look at the pharmaceutical sector, the PLI has been brought in for pharmaceutical sector. Few cancer drugs have been, made duty free. The 3 cancer drugs that they've spoken of. There have also been some drugs which have been allowed to be imported, life-saving drugs at a lower duty, which has been there in the past as well. I agree with you on the API and us as a nation becoming the pharmaceutical capital of the world, or the hub for manufacturing. But R&D has always been the missing bit when it comes to healthcare in India, whether it is pharmaceutical or whether it is technology. What do you think can be done in the budget, which has not been done in the past, to bring out the R&D in India? Because R&D has been not only the missing bit, but the most expensive part of the pharma operations. So whoever wants to go in first.
Well, I think the government has definitely increased the R&D allocation. There's no doubt about it. But how much will it trickle down to healthcare and to pharma needs to be seen, because everything is not very clear right now. And I don't have any second opinions on this, what you are saying, that unless you increase the inputs into R&D, well, you're not going to get anything, worthwhile. And R&D, by the way, also takes a lot of time. So it is not, 5-year oriented or 3-year oriented. This is going to happen. You better start spending more money. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Mr. Khurana, same question to you. Do you see the budget and the announcement related to R&D and innovation impact the production of medical equipment in India?
It was not very specifically touched for the medical equipment, but if you see, R&D and skilling was mentioned multiple times by the respected finance minister. And if you also see now, DOP is working very closely to launch a new R&D initiative by name BRIC. And they are really at the last stages, and I guess it will be launched very soon, because everybody realizes when you're talking of a make in India and self-reliance, it has to come through technology. And technology, there are 2 ways. Either you buy a technology from outside or you build a technology in-house. So, and both needs to be done. And in fact, if you feel that India can just suddenly make technology for everything, probably we are not ready, because academia and industry partnerships were never that great. Whereas what has happened outside, those companies are very closely working with academia, and which is starting now here in India. So and what Dr. Lal just now said, Brigadier Lal, is that cycle time is long. I also know that it is 3 to 4 years minimum it takes for a product to be ready to go to the market after all the tests, CDSCO clearances and all. So I'm quite optimistic that I continuously keep meeting DOP offices and all. I know that there's a lot of initiative happening, though this should have happened a little bit more aggressively before PLA launch, because PLA is like, you're putting a bogies first, and engine is not put. Engine is more like a R&D. So, but now that realization is very high, and it's people are working on that.
Dr. Lal, ASHA workers, Anganwadi workers and helpers are the backbone of the healthcare ecosystem in the interiors of our country. The upgrades to Anganwadi centers under the Saksham Anganwadi and Poshan 2.0 initiative that has been announced were planned to combat the malnutrition. Do you think there is a possibility of public-private partnership to increase screening of diagnostics in rural India? What is your view on what needs to happen to increase the screening of diagnosis so that we can look at a healthier nation in view that we are already facing the challenge of the costing that CGHS offers to the diagnostic companies? So what is your view that what needs to happen, sir?
I think it was a very, very complex question, but let me try to answer it. See, the thing is that India is reeling under the attack of the so-called non-communicable diseases or lifestyle diseases. 65% of our population is dying, and every day you hear of a 28-year-old man, sudden heart attack, and so and so forth. So that comes under the National Health Mission, whose allocation has been increased by 14%, which is not bad, but this is not enough. So that I think we should all realize, and once you allocate all this, then the testing for non-communicable diseases, which consist of diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, cancer, and stroke, etc., then you can say that something can be done here. I can say that the government has tried, but it is something too little, too late. And we would have welcomed, some, better status given to the healthcare industry, like which has been given to so many other industries. I've often said that. And I think the time has come for government to realize that, we are losing nearly 1.5 to 2% of GDP by our population not being well. NCDs, So I think it requires a little more emphasis here. And well, let us see the fine print, as Sunil was saying, and let's move forward after that.
Mr. Khurana, when we talk about equipments, there have been some path-breaking innovations that have happened in India. Few of them are towards the diagnostic space. When you look at the quality of cameras along with the AI clubbed, which brings diagnostics and screening to a rural part of the country without having a trained technologist sitting there. But when you look at what happens once the product goes into production, the cost, the benefits, or the incentives to these companies, most of these people try and start selling this equipment overseas rather than using it for the Indian market because of the production capacity, and rather selling it at a place where they can get better prices. What do you think the ecosystem needs to happen into the ecosystem so that we can create incentives for these producers who are looking at creating innovations to solve the challenges that we as a country face?
Absolutely, you rightly said, and I can tell you something interesting. About 7-8 years back, with the help of Intel, we built a small device, very small device of about 60 grams, and that was nothing but an ECG machine. You could have touched on around your heart in 10 seconds time, and then that transmitted the ECG to your paired mobile. But that didn't took off because private, it was not going that through, and government should have taken it. So unless there is a bigger take by government and they launch state by state, it is not going to get that benefit, because individuals cannot go multiple places to sell that, and that is where they go abroad to get those things done very quickly. But I want to just tell you that after COVID, the technology uses for remote diagnosis really caught. I mean, if you see, teleradiology was there for a long time, but with the right bandwidth of internet, teleradiology became very regular. We supplied a very high number, I mean, probably more than 150 ICU centers, which was known as a 10-bed ICU. It was launched by a CTO of Aadhaar Card. He was a technical member, and we supplied products, ready products, which can deliver the ICU information through the monitors to a hub and spoke model. So we did that even in Mizoram and Nagaland and all those territories. We did, and effectively it worked beautifully. So there are people who are trying to launch it, but I think the hand holding has to happen with government. If government brings and starts connecting all the PHCs and upgraded PHCs and centers like that, then it will really catch fire. But on a singular basis, few people take that initiative. It is going to take a long time. I mean, if you see the China model, I mean, what Dr. Braders have said some time back, I exactly know same sentiments for China I also have. But we need to learn the way they do this at the government level very quickly. They just launch it and government drives it and makes it successful. That is where execution in India we sometimes miss. We have great ideas, but we don't make that as a reality. But I'm hoping that with the lots and lots of drive now, I can see a huge drive coming from DOP as well as Health Secretary Office. And I feel that you will see this coming very fast and technologies will be used a lot for the screening. That's my lot of optimism.
Sorry, I got bumped off. There's a Wi-Fi issue today because of the rains. But Dr. Lal, let me come to you. I have a specific question. You are the buyer and purchaser for a lot of medical equipment. For your conversation around GST for many years, but it has not been solved. Address what are your views on the challenges in the healthcare industry that we face because of the GST?
Well, the first thing which you I think are wanting to know is about the GST, in which we have been raising our voice every now and then. And it's a very simple thing that, well, whatever we purchase, we pay GST on that. And we can't recover that GST because the government has levied the 0% duty. And we have been saying that exempted us, it should be 0% so that we can get some input credit. So that is one part. But that again is a tussle which is going on with the government. In the same way, and I can say that there are lots of drugs, including tuberculosis drugs, tuberculosis testing reagents, and for life-saving kind of conditions, which are still being taxed. So I don't want to take one note kind of things here, but I'm just telling you the whole picture. It needs much more emphasis from the government side, and they must treat healthcare because of a large population now. We have crossed the population of China, and you just heard from Mr. Khurana that how Chinese government, is, helping their, people live longer, and living longer is also not the only thing. You must be living better. So what we are saying is qualitative, and qualitatively the government can do a lot by doing exactly what we've been saying all these years. And that is, first of all, increase the allocation to health slightly more. 13%, jump from 80,000 crores to 91,000 crores, which is, not much. The government itself has said many times that we will make this as 2.5% of the GDP by 2025. So 2025 to aa gaya yaar. So 2025 mein ab ye nahi karoge, so then we will keep on talking of what we are saying. We are repeating the same thing. And another thing which the government, is doing, which we do not agree with, is that they always put, the water and sanitation in our health budget. But water and sanitation, what does it have to do with the health budget? We are talking only about diseases. So this now 91,000 crores, which is 13% jump, also includes, as it included last year, the water and sanitation budget. So this also needs a correction from my point of view. Harvinder, you're frozen.
I totally agree with you, sir.
Yeah.
Mr. Khurana, is that fine now? Mr. Khurana, can you hear me?
Coming, not very fluent, but
so, okay. Mr. Khurana, we are also looking at when we have addressed cancer in this particular budget. But is it okay to pick up just one particular health condition or a disease and start addressing that, whereas there are many other autoimmune diseases where clinical trials are happening across the world. But if any Indian needs to be included in that clinical trial, the cost is prohibitive. I know of someone who has an autoimmune disorder, somebody who works in the government, and when she was looking at being, importing this particular drug to try and save her, it is costing 16 lakh rupees, one single dosage. How do we as healthcare, providers, companies, players, ecosystem participants bring this issue up with the government so that we can push them to look at human life with more consideration and bring the economic decisions related to that?
No, you are very right. And just three drugs for cancer is not sufficient. I mean, I also was surprised that very specifically you would have said that 3 drugs we will, bring at a lower custom. They may have their reason, but we continuously keep seeing in Facebook and other areas where people appeal that, I have this problem and I need to raise it. Once again, human life is very key, and government need to form policies. Customs on any such drug, which are as such very expensive, should not be there. And then there must be some kind of coverage. But it is way beyond us to drive it at the medical devices. But personally, I feel that government need to further come forward and help people. Similarly, AIMS kind of institutes who have a very, deep, I've not said deep pockets, but they have a very strong voice. They need to raise at the top level to say that, these few cases which happen, very random cases, we need to help solve those issues. It is beyond those specific individuals.
And if I may add in the same breath, Harbinder, the case which you are mentioning of somebody known to you for autoimmune diseases, well, these should be allowed on case-by-case basis. Now by making a policy decision that only 3 cancer drugs, customs duty has been reduced, it's not going to affect, what Sunil was just talking about. So there should be another window opening, and where doctors are sitting there in the government of India who said that yes, this is an authentic case, the other drugs have not worked. Nobody wants to import such an expensive drug into India unless it is not available or it is really required. So it is case-to-case basis, which on a humanitarian ground, we can do it. We keep sending our missions abroad to Sudan and to Turkey, etc. So we can do something for our own people here. And I think this is a very fitting kind of a case which Sunil Khurana has just said. And I think it should be allowed on case-by-case basis.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Lal, despite a decrease, out-of-pocket expenditure still remains a very high in our country. How can improved budget allocations help reduce the out-of-pocket expenditure? And what is the role that diagnostic services can play in this? Because that's where a large part of the expenditure goes out of pocket. What are your suggestions for the government, and what is it that we could do with regards to insurance and impact such kind of expenses which are impacting people's quality of life?
See, I have already mentioned about, these non-communicable diseases, which are actually 65% killer diseases in India. So you don't have to look anywhere else. I mean, there are infectious diseases also which are killing Indians. But let's talk about the non-communicable disease part. Now, if you go and see yourself what is happening on the ground, you will not like, what is happening, because what we are talking has not reached there. Even the Indian-made, instruments, which are good enough to be run in a health wellness center or a community health center, etc. Well, you go and see there that there are gaps, in that, availability. If the instrument is there, the reagents are not there. If the reagent is there, the instrument is malfunctioning. So again, it's been said many times that the problem in healthcare is more of a management problem. But then somebody has to manage this problem. And of course, the private people will keep on doing their own bit. We are doing from our own side, with FICCI, in our own, kind of foundations also. But I think the government must, realize that it's time to give healthcare, some kind of a status. It's a special kind of a status which we require. And they talked about semiconductor industry. They're talking about so much of creation of employment and people to help the new employees, giving them one third kind of 15,000 rupees divided into. Those things are fine, but they must pay more attention to the control of these diseases, which are lifestyle diseases.
I totally agree with you, sir. I mean, considering healthcare as an industry has to go beyond words and be demonstrated in action. Dr. Lal and Mr. Khurana, my last question to you is a very simple one. What are the hits and the misses of this budget? Hits, if any, and misses, I think there could be many. Let me begin with you, Dr. Lal.
I think on their own, they have not done badly at all. I mean, if you look at what the government is saying, that the employment and the skilling, has been, so much of emphasis has been, given to them, supporting MSMEs, the infrastructure development and adoption of technology, digitizing, social, development projects also. But the misses are that they themselves, the government has admitted that we'll be spending 2.5% of GDP by 2025. That is nowhere in sight. They're still spending 1.9%. And I also mentioned that why include, water and sanitation into it? Just leave it health. And you will see the healthcare of the, Indians coming up. Second thing is a very, local kind of a thing in this ABPMJ, etc. They had to correct two things. One was the pricing mechanism, that what they were giving, to, the prices for particular, operations or procedures had been fixed, etc. That was low. And the money was also not being reimbursed in time. So these are two things which I think they should have corrected, and they, sometime they'll have to look into it very deeply.
Mr. Khurana, what is your take?
Yeah, so in my view, I liked one area which probably nobody would be talking, is that catching young. Interns were really focus area. And if you catch them from the institute and train them, shape them the way you want it. So there are some subsidies and some method which has been directed here. Some 5,000 will be picked by the government every month. From your CSR, you can probably pick and cross subsidize that. So that's something is really welcome. In my view, that is going to help, because you don't have a ready-made team available who can stay to be hired. So I welcome that. And what I feel strongly missing is that I have been voicing every time, it doesn't really matter that you raise the custom duty slightly every year. I mean, last 9 years time, I've seen from 55 rupees to now 84 rupees on a dollar. Dollar keeps going up and import is not really, nobody talks about that. But if we raise from a basic custom duty from 5 to 10 or 15 to protect the Indian industry and grow them, this should be done. I don't know why it is not done. And I always feel that that's a big missing, and that should be done. So these are the two areas I strongly have those views.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khurana and Dr. Lal, for being with us to discuss about what we think about the healthcare budget. I think the government has shown their intent with what they have announced in this budget. But I think the importance that they need to lay on healthcare as an industry and the percentage of the GDP that they are allocating, I think they need to demonstrate more importance to healthcare as an industry. And I think, if I were to loosely say that if they were to just look at the percentage of the money spent by a family on healthcare, could be a marker for them to understand what the country needs to invest in this particular sector. So thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much for joining us on BW Businessworld and BW Healthcare World.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Bye. Bye. Thanks. So was it all?
Well, I'd like all my panelists to switch on their cameras now. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for watching us live on BW TV. Today, the topic for this panel discussion will revolve around yesterday's union budget and its impact on the education sector, whether it represents a forward vision or a missed opportunity. Firstly, I'd like to welcome all my esteemed panelists. We have with us Mr. Vinesh Menon, Co-Chair CII National Education Committee and CEO of Ampersand Group, Dr. Bhimriya Maitri, Director of IIM Nagpur, Professor Deepak Khare, Dean Finance and Planning, IIT Roorkee, Dr. Sunita Ratan, Dean Faculty of Science and Technology and Director, Amity Institute of Applied Sciences, and also Mr. Rama Shankar Pandey, Governing Council Member of Automotive Skills Development Council. Now, yesterday's budget was our Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's 7th consecutive budget, and it was out and out about education, about employment, about skilling, and a budget of rupees 1.48 lakh crores has been allocated towards these agendas. Just to highlight a couple of developments from the budget towards the education sector, first was the Model Skill Loan Scheme, which has been revised to facilitate loans up to 7.5 lakh rupees, which is expected to help 25,000 students annually. Also, for the youth who do not fall under any government scheme, they will be provided with the support loan up to rupees 10 lakh for higher education in domestic institutions. Now, another key development that has been considered commendable by industry experts and the education sector was a comprehensive internship scheme, which has been introduced to empower 1 crore youth over the next 5 years. Now, under this scheme, 500 top companies will provide 12-month internships to these students. Another scheme was the newly centrally sponsored scheme for skilling in collaboration with state governments and industries. Now, as our finance minister said yesterday, about 20 lakh youth will be skilled over the period of next 5 years. A total of 1,000 ITIs will be upgraded. The course content and the design will be made up to the mark of the industry standards. Mr. Menon, my first question is to you. Well, even though we're seeing a significant increase in the budget allocation towards higher education, which is 8% higher than what was allocated in the previous year, we're not seeing, a lot of talk about primary education and primary schools. Why do you think that is? And also, does it spark a fear of increasing privatization in the sector?
So thank you so much, and I wish you had not started with me because I have mixed feelings right now. I honestly, when I've been reading the budget, the thoughts are broken into three parts. I think as a citizen of the country, I think overall it's a good budget. I think the intent is clear. There's a lot of action in trying to bring down the fiscal deficit of the country, which is a good thing. I mean, it was almost 9% during the COVID times, and it's right now come down to 6%, and I think they're targeting about 4.9%. So whenever the fiscal deficit comes down, it's good for the country. It's good for interest rates. It's good for lending. It's overall business will come up, and that's all very good. I'm also extremely happy about what the finance minister has done for the youth of the country and for adults. I think all these, the very fact that there's been a provision kept aside for employment and skilling, the fact that 1,000 ITIs are getting upgraded, SOPs for both employees for internships as well as for the employers to hire employees to hire people. MSME, all this is very good, and I think these are all some of the good things that have happened to the budget. Now, the area which I get a little concerned about is exactly what you mentioned. When you talk about allocating for education, employment, and skilling, I think it's very important to start breaking this up into education, separate bucket, employment and skilling in separate buckets. Because education itself is an extremely complex area. And with close to about 250 million of our children now in that age group where they are studying, it almost represents 20% of our population. And I think, to not really go a little deep into that area is a little concerning, to say the least. I don't know if it is because the expectations are very, very high, because currently what's been the keywords which has been working in all our education's mind, especially in the school side, is as follows. You have the NEP, which has been launched, and it's supposed to, the implementation is on. But I wish there was some mention about how that implementation is going and where the budgets are going to try and get that implementation executed. There is the much talked about PM Shri schools, which is supposed to be the model schools for working on government, to try and change the way the government schools are. And I don't think there's any mention about that. Last mile connectivity and getting the last mile education to the last mile child can only happen when technology gets completely beefed up and ramped up. And I think there's been a small amount of 355 crores allocated to research and development and probably innovation and technology, which to me in this sector, I think is a little less. There is really no talk about how to bridge the early child education with the mainstream education, and therefore the attrition and learning outcomes, etc., which today's generation needs, is a problem. We already know that there is, like you mentioned somewhere, that there is a slight disconnect in alignment of both the private school space and the public school space. While the numbers are clearly favoring the public schools, nearly 1.2 million schools, the fact is that nearly 40 to 50% of the children who study today go to the private schools. And therefore, I think some mention should have been made to try and get them both into a mechanism of coexistence, which I think is missing. So overall, I think a little bit of sharpness in these areas would have been very, very useful. And I can't but, I was listening to some of the earlier panelists. Two things stand out for me. One, Dr. Lal talked about how healthcare is such an important area in this country that it needs some kind of a special status. I could say the same of education. I think it's very, very important to get the special status for education. Secondly, they talked about a marker of the family income getting spent on healthcare. Well, education, the family income that gets spent is almost 10 to 12%. So I think if you go by that marker and you try and hold on to the percentage on GDP at sub 3%, when the 1964 Qatari Commission talks about taking it up to 6%, I think there is a bit of a disconnect there. So this is overall, been working in my mind, and it's not very easy to just say that the budget is not good, but it is certainly mixed feelings. Overall, a lot of good things, good intent, but I think they should have done something more in the education space, which I think is in a bit of a ICU situation, if I may dare say.
Well, thank you, Mr. Menon. Dr. Maitri, I want to come to you now. The Modi government's third term includes a provision of up to 10 lakh rupees for higher education in domestic institutions. Firstly, how do you view this development? Also, how will it impact the higher education system in India?
Thank you very much, Savi. I think this is a great initiative, 10 lakh for domestic institution. If you look at today, students, those who are joining Institute of National Importance, particularly IIT, IIM, they get the loan, whatever they want, even going abroad. But in Indian institution, when they would like to join, where there is not certainty about their employment or the job placement, so their students used to get a lot of problems for their education because they have to mortgage something and to get the loan, and otherwise they never get, otherwise only they get only premier institution. So I think it is a great initiative, great step for education for everybody, and higher education particularly, to increase the higher education level gross enrollment ratio, particularly after 12. This is going to be a great initiative, and students also, if they take a loan, it also comes with a responsibility and accountability, because bank will say after the graduation, after 6 months, they have to start paying the installment. Right. So that responsibility comes, and their education, if they take a loan and if they study, probably I think they will be more holistic human being, come out after the education, and they will be responsible, accountable, what is mentioned in national education policy. And it is really going to help them and their family to stand up on their own. So it is, I must say, it is a most welcome and great initiative.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Maitri. Professor Khare, I have a follow-up question to what Dr. Maitri said. For years and years, there has been a perception that studying abroad offers better education, better infrastructure. Do you believe there's a bias towards international education? And also with the new budget developments, do you think this will encourage more students to study and to pursue higher education within India?
Dear esteemed panel members, first of all, I am grateful to the organization for inviting us on behalf of the Institute, on behalf of our director, Professor K.K. Pant. I'm honored to share some of the thoughts on recently announced budget. The thing which you have raised, the issue that higher education in India is most important, and the government initiative in this budget. For example, if you just see, yesterday they have launched a scheme where world-class institution from 1500 crore to 1800 crore. This is the budget provision they have made. It is doubled if you compare 2022. So in 2 years, the budget is increased 2 times. So the facilities, the budget, the infrastructure development, digital transformation, if these things are available in India, then the students will try to be in India rather than going abroad, because of the same facilities if they are getting in India, then they would like to study. And the most important thing is the quality education. We in IIT Roorkee, we try to give the best education which is possible. And globally, nowadays in IIT Roorkee, we have different schemes where the international professors are available here as visiting professor. So that phase has gone where we were in isolation. Now it is the global world. So all the facilities which are available in IIT Roorkee also, and the government of India has launched so many schemes where students can go abroad for 6 months, 2 months, 5 months. And even in IIT Roorkee, we have a scheme where the student credits can also be taken care. Somebody wants to go for 6 months instead of going for the entire duration. If they go for some small period of time, 6 months, they take some credit and then they come here. So that facility we have incorporated. So the present budget, the allocation, this will also facilitate. And moreover, if you see the budget, many opportunities like the rural development, climate resilience, budget allocations are there. For example, in water sector, if we just see, they have increased 55% budget in water, this flood control and all. So this gives a big opportunity for the students, and even the global, the players, they want to come and work here in association with the institution IIT Roorkee. So I think that is a great move which is there.
Right. Thank you, Professor Khare. Mr. Pandey, we'll come to the aspect of skilling. There has been a tremendous emphasis on skilling in this year's budget, right? Especially when we talk about the upgradation of ITIs and the course content. I want to ask you, what will be the impact on the ground, and also especially when we talk about skilling and employment generation in the automotive sector?
Thanks a lot, Sabi, for having me here. First of all, I really agree with Dr. Maitri that it's a welcome step, especially when this interest subvention program with 3% on the 10 lakh. And I think we just got that view. And what Mr. Menon was telling regarding these three buckets, employment, skilling, and education. Unfortunately, when we look at from the scale of India and the marginalized section and the current challenge of this demographic disaster what India may face if we don't do what we are needing to do. If you look at the overall allocation is a welcome, is actually quite a lot this year. It has increased, but still what the NEP and Vasas 6% of the overall GDP in the education, we're still almost 50% of that. So if you ask somebody who is keen on skilling and connection to employment, we are not fulfilled. So just to make that statement that we actually need almost double of what we are doing, from 1,25,000 or 1,48,000 to almost more than 3 lakh crore is something which we should put in, because ultimately education is the only factor or skilling which actually changes the fate of our common citizen. This is where, if I look at my case or any one of us here, just because of this education, our life changed. If I look at my father, my grandfather, and myself, all the success, actually, the major factor comes from this skilling and education. Having said that, on ground, skilling is seen as a separate from education, and that's something which is, if you look at Germany, for example, the dual education actually makes it more coherent. And more than the allocation of money, the direction in the budget is very clear that we are going to have more and more integration of this. We would like to see, and this is actually great to get the recognition to the industry, that the industry is now recognized to, offer this internship, and then they are supported. Forget about the money. It's a very minuscule money. But the direction to give the first-time employees something, when they come into the industry, giving them something for the internship, I think this direction of trusting the industry that we can take care along with the educational institution, along with the sector skill councils, I think that's a great move. Because at the end of the day, when NEP, I think in next 2 years, we need to reach a level of 50% of vocational in the education. So all the direction is leading to making education, skilling, and employment all into one. And finally, it is employment. The quality of manpower is important, right? The quality and productivity for the country to rise the GDP. Ultimately, GDP, everything comes from the manpower and the quality of manpower. And that is where I will say the direction is fantastic. But we have to actually walk a long way, because if you look at ground reality of skilling, if you look at the reports of skilling, crores of people have been skilled. Where are they? I at least don't see that many in the industry. I could see even with a less number of IMs and ITs and others, I can see more people, they are visible in the industry compared to where are those who are skilled in crores. And I don't see that. And that is where the question mark is, are we effective? And rather than having this as a separate, verticals, the best is actually let the industry what they need. And this is what the role of all the sector skill council was in the past, that we get into this dual education method or integrating vocational into the educational institutions and let the industry come part of it. So to me, I think the biggest silver icing is the starting of that, but it's a long way to go, Savi, that how we get skilling, enrollment, and finally the employment or placement visible. And for that, we have to celebrate the skill, because ultimately what happens is our country is actually obsessed with educational degree and designation a lot compared to skilling is seen as plumber, as seen as carpenter. Skill is me, you, all of us are skilled in something. So getting that skill aspirational is something, rather than getting into a coaching or something which is just on the degree level. I think we have to come and celebrate these skills. So maybe my take here will be that whatever government is doing is fine. The direction is clear. As industry, as academia, we must do something which is again adding to the aspirational value of the skill, which can lead to the employment.
Well, very rightly said, there is a gap that persists in the education system. Dr. Ratan, I'll come to you now. We're getting mixed reactions from the panel on the budget allocated towards R&D. What are your views on this? Do you think the budget is going to benefit R&D in India?
Yeah. Thank you, Savi, for giving me this chance. And I'm so sorry because I missed some of the views of our colleagues because I got disconnected. That is the downside of the, you can say, technology. Okay, when I see R&D, I think it's a mixed reaction from all the research and organization institutions and institutions of higher education. Because though the budget is very good, it is talking about the skill, it is talking about bridging the gap between the industry and the private-public partnerships in educations. But when I see research and development, though you can see by and large, it is looking at that we have got more in our basket compared to the last year. But when we go for specific details, you can see when Department of Science and Technology, it has received 8,000 crores, a marginal increase over 7.9 crores last year. But you can say the problem is that it was underutilized. Some of the budget which was allocated was underutilized. I would like to inform you that 4,000 crores was the only utilized one and rest is unspent. So seeing that, I think the budget is fine. But you can see that our main things like the government is focusing on quantum mission. So now this is the first time that government has given the funds to quantum mission, and that too, National Quantum Mission has got from 0 to 427 crores this year. So that's a huge leap for our research and organization in that sector. Then, because Union government has already approved 6,000 crores over 8 years, it has to give. So this is the first installment we are getting for that. But when it comes to other organizations like DBT, again, the budget has slightly cut. Like it is 2.6 compared to, it is 2.2 compared to 2.6 last year. So again, maybe because it was unspent. When it comes to the other figures, you can see Department of DSIR, which oversees more than 3 dozens in laboratory around the country. It again tells a different story because here DSIR was able to spend all of its budget. So therefore, it has got slight increased budget this year. Similarly, and this is the same story with MOES, you can see. But what I can see as research and R&D activities, the budget which is allotted, it is allotted to the newer schemes, to the upcoming futuristic schemes like Deep Ocean mission has got, meteorological has got. So I think if I go for R&D, the budget is by and large okay. But for higher education, when you can see that for central universities, the budget has been allocated and it is increased. But for us, you can see private universities, nothing has been said in the budget, right? And then for other priority areas of the mark, leaving aside few priority areas, others are yet to be opened. So we don't know how much. So it is a mix of the budget for R&D also.
Thank you, Dr. Ratan. Mr. Menon, coming back to you, it is high time that students across the globe, when we are talking about India specifically, they get hands-on experience, they get practical experience of what's happening in the industry. And that is why the internship scheme is, being applauded. What do you think about that? How future forward is the scheme of internship?
Oh, definitely future forward, but I need to correct you here. Even today in schools, beyond grade 6, there is a skilling program that is there in all the schools. So skilling is not really restricted to only when you come out of school. It's actually starting within the 6th grade itself. And in fact, the group that I represent, apart from private schools, we also work a lot with government schools. And the big portion of those government schools that we offer is skilling programs to the children. So there's no doubt about the fact that skilling is absolutely critical for our organization and for our country. And I think more important is to give skilling the kind of respect that it deserves, which exists in other countries. I think that needs to start coming to India. So to that extent, it's an extremely futuristic step, no doubt. But again, I go back to 2 points, which is how do you try and probably take a step back and try and get a little more emphasis inside the school side. I mean, what happens to all those children who are dropping out of schools? Now, the maximum dropouts happen in grade 9. Now, by grade 9, are they skilled enough to be able to, what do you do next? Do you get them back into school by force? Or do you try and see how to get them, further skilled so that they can get into the industry? These are the areas that probably one needs to get into. I'm also, I want to just reflect a minute upon what Mr. Ramashankar Pandey mentioned. And I think he mentioned one very important point, and that's a lot to do with the time frame that we are in. Your show talks about 2047 Viksit Bharat. Now, by the time we reach 2047, we're talking about 23 years from now. The Viksit Bharat won't happen unless we have a robust set of adults who are completely, self-employed or employed as someone, and livelihood should be at its peak. Those 23-year-old adults at those point of time are kids today. They are right now going through the education journey. And if you don't start that today, then our 2047 Viksit Bharat may not happen. So that is where the concerns lie as far as the time frame is concerned. If you don't do it now, I think we'll miss the boat. That is the concern here.
Thank you for reflecting on some of the missed opportunities that you think. Dr. Maitri, I'll come to you now. Speaking about the NEP, which was introduced back in 2020, and the education discourse has revolved around it since then. Do you think the present budget has remained silent on it, and how will it impact the implementation of NEP on ground?
Yeah, thank you, Savi. I think if you look at the last 5-year budget, even since 2020, even if you start seeing, every year budget has gone up except 2022. Otherwise, it has gone up, and this time also a sizable amount. And if you look at the detailed study, and I will speak from higher education perspective, you see funding for central university has gone up 28%. So it is a tremendous improvement, and funding for IITs have a little bit dip, few numbers, 2-digit here and there. IITs, because they are all already established as a premier institutions and they are doing extremely well. Now the time is to promote central universities to raise the bar, move to the next orbit. As a part of NEP, and you know that there are in NEP the 3 kinds of institution: Meru multidisciplinary education and research universities, where IITs and PG institutions like Indian Institute of Science and all come. And then comprehensive teaching universities, they are the central universities, few central university, and all state and private universities may come in that. And then degree granting college. Apart from that, one more category may come, that is cluster university. So no affiliated colleges should be there. So keeping that in mind, if you see the overall budget, internship, I think Vinesh ji talked about and Ramashankar ji talked about. Internship is basically experiential learning. Basically, now in a national credit framework, we have come up with 3 kinds of areas while education one has to focus. One is a theory part, because theory precedes the practice. That is extremely important. That we call academics. And second one is skill. And the third bracket we call it as a experiential learning. And experiential learning come from the internship, and it is mandatory. Most of the professional courses, it has been made mandatory already as a part of NEP implementation. It is already started on 29th July. We are going to celebrate 4th year of NEP, and low hanging fruits already implementation has been started, and 2035 it is expected to complete 100%. And as Vinicius said, Viksit Bharat is also part of NEP 2020, 2035 we complete, or 35 or 38 we complete NEP implementation. And there onwards, those who are graduating, they are all part of NEP, and they are also approaching, the young age to as a youths of New India or Viksit Bharat. And if you look at the current, GDP, we are going to very soon a third biggest economy, crossing, beating Japan and Germany. And if you see the current development, many things are happening. They will come to the surface once, our Education Commission of India will take place very soon, and that and current roles of regulator will change. But at the same time, in existing position, they are all playing a role, and that is where I give an example of Central University, 28%. It speaks a lot about how to raise the bar and how they should be ready as a, for focusing on R&D. R&D is also one of the important focus. There may not be a separate budget, but budget for all the universities, institution giving R&D also accounts for that. Apart from National Research Foundation or Anusandhan, we call it, which is given to DST, and the ICSSR funding. Those are all other fundings. Apart from that, sufficient money is given. So therefore, NEP implementation is on, and there is no separate budget for NEP because NEP has to be implemented at institution level, university level, and the budget is given for them. And already last 3-4 years, most of the central government institutions like ours, every time and now we also submit a report what implementation we have done and what is the current progress. That monitoring is already in process and work is already in process. And that is why if you look at the overall budget, internship is one part, and domestic, as you asked the question earlier, domestic institutions, that 10 lakh, this is the very, very, we call about inclusiveness, particularly rural students, those who are coming from rural background, they are going to get a lot when they join the institutions, a loan problem, lot of collateral and all. So that it is sorted out, and probably gross enrollment is going to affect. Plus the inclusiveness part, urban and rural divide will again, it will, it can be bridged through this particular initiative. These are all part of the NEP. Without mentioning NEP, all this entire budget is going to be a part of implementation of NEP is nothing but raising the bar from current level to the next level.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maitri. Now we're short on time. Quickly, in 30 seconds, Professor Khare, I want to ask you, looking at this year's budget, what were some of the hits and some of the misses in the education sector?
Pardon, some of the
hits and some misses.
Okay. I think if our panelist has also raised that the R&D part, the budget is not that much which we expect, but at the same time, if you just go into the detail, that 1,000, this 100 crore internship, where this industry institute partnership can enhance, where they have mentioned that CSR component. So I think a lot of opportunity for the institution will be there to interact with the industry through this internship program and get their CSR fund, because 2%, otherwise they are spending 2% of their profit, they are spending for the, they have to spend. So they can easily spend this money for the R&D things. That would be a great boost that we can use this for the future, and the advantage of the, we can go further close to the industry and institute academia, this can further enhance. And we can really achieve the Make in India and the Bharat when we are really contributing for the application research and the societal, and then we can contribute to the society. And this is what in our institution, our director, Professor Pant, is facilitating, motivating to achieve all the things which we can do to achieve the sustainable development goals by rural centers or sustainability. So these issues are pertaining in all the institution, and the IIT Roorkee is also working hard to achieve the Viksit Bharat goals.
Thank you, Professor Khare. Mr. Pandey, your closing remarks in 30 seconds.
Yeah, so I think full marks for the higher education and whatever government visas for the private sector, the industry, especially manufacturing. This is where I think it has really hit the right chord, and I believe that this will give us a lot of benefits where the industry is going to lead from the front. The academia is going to make a full support, and then the internship and overall employment will get the fill. But that also is the top of the pyramid. I think for me, the where we have to do something really fast and urgent is the school dropouts is something which is before ninth. What Mr. Menon also spoke about. I think we must get why skilling is no taker. Why the schools cannot become a skilling center from that age, that even after dropping out from ninth, they can start their journey somewhere. Because the problem is it's a no return kind of situation. Once they're out of the system, they're out, and then all the prosperity is deserted from them. So I think that is where we are looking at some more direction. Of course, NEP is talking about really merging this. Every school can offer, and I agree with Mr. Menon that we have the supply side done, but I think it's not budget problem, but it's actually societal problem where there is no taker for skill. There is no nobody would like to marry their daughter to a master plumber or a master technician like I see in Germany or elsewhere. I think this is where we are missing. So it's how we can allocate some money for education or whatever you can call education of this part of, to make it really aspirational, make it famous, make it like celebrate these skills so that people at 9th, 10th level, ITI level, they are also recognized that ITI is also like a mini IIT. Make the IIT that way, celebrate them. Convocation should happen in that way. I think that is where we need to allocate some
Thank you,
money
Mr. Pandey. Dr. Ratan, your closing
Yeah,
remarks.
thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Savi. Savi, I must endorse whatever my colleagues are saying, that Dr. Ramashankar Pandey said that we are looking for the skills in the tune of the skills abroad, right? But what I see, what is the miss in this budget is there is a lack of specific funds or incentives for promoting international research collaboration. We are talking of that the students will be given so and so loan for the institutions which are domestic. Why not outside? Because when we see globalization, the student has to go outside and explore the world. So I think more could have been done for the students pursuing overseas education. And then the second thing which is pinching me is that there is a rampant fund crunch in HEIs. Right? You can see the for the education out of 1.48 crores which have been given to employment, skill, and the education. Out of that, 57.224 crore was allocated in 2023, and here we are only having 47,000 crores which are allocated. So it's a by decrease, right? So education, that is the second thing which is not right. And I have already said, though it is very good that central universities are getting a major share, but then other universities are also there, right? The government universities,
Thank you
state
to all the
universities,
panelists.
same.
We
Thank you.
have other panelists sitting in the waiting room. So thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your views with us. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Can we start? Welcome back to the last panel of Budget with Business World. I am Sahil Mohan Gupta. In this session, we will take a look at the auto industry and how this union budget has panned out for the sector. Joining me again is Nikhil Chawla, a seasoned auto and tech columnist, content creator, and founder of The Unbiased. We also have Somen Mandal from Counterpoint Research, where he is a senior analyst looking at the auto sector. So before we take a deep dive into the happenings of the budget of the auto sector, Nikhil and Somen, what are your preliminary thoughts on the union budget?
I'll go first. I think it was kind of missing. There was an absence of anything to do with automotive industry, which was kind of sad. We were expecting a lot to be kind of heard about it, and I could see that when I got some quotations by car makers, especially Mercedes-Benz India, where they mentioned that we were expecting something out of the budget for automotive industry, but which was missing. Again, what we saw was the FAME scheme allocation has gone up to like 2,000 plus 2,600 crores plus, and announcements like the ALI scheme may have like a positive impact, but we can't say yet. Also, 3,500 crore rupees allocated for the PLI scheme, which is almost a 60% jump from previous year. But again, I feel there was a lot missing, which we were expecting for the automotive industry. And also, with the transition and the push for the government to EVs, there was not much there. It was just that, yeah, EVs will get cheaper and the raw materials will be cheaper to access and all. But still, I feel that there could have been a lot more we could have heard.
Somen, your thoughts?
Yeah. So we have not heard anything about related to automotive segment, but obviously on overall the budget looks growth oriented because it talks about many things like for agricultural development, employment, energy security, which can have not direct but indirect impact on automotive industry. But yeah, major missing, as also Nikhil mentioned, there was no mention about FAME 3 scheme, what automobile industry was expecting, and no clear other budgets for other topics also, like maybe charging infrastructure or also battery recycling and all. Yeah.
So, well, as both of you have mentioned, the two big headlines of this budget has been that a lot of things that were expected haven't really happened. There's no FAME 3. There's a pivot towards the PLI scheme where automakers who are taking advantage of those schemes can accrue benefits if they operate at scale. But then there was this other thing of custom duties being reduced or being eliminated for certain minerals like lithium, which is a critical component for manufacturing batteries. Do you think that will have some kind of benefit for car manufacturers who are making in India?
Yeah, before answering, I want to touch upon one point. Like, we may not have heard anything about automotive, but we have to know what are the schemes currently going on for the automotive segment and why we did not heard anything about FAME 3. Like you mentioned, PLI scheme. So for that PLI scheme that has already attracted more than 67,000 crores of investment already. Right, and already 85 applicants that is approved by government. So there is a lot to do under PLI scheme, and government has also allocated more than 25,000 crores during financial year 2023 to 2027. So that means PLI scheme, that is one of the scheme that is going on currently. Another thing I have to touch upon, right, in recent times, government has done a great job in standardization of battery and also advanced chemistry cell battery storage, right? So for that too, government has budget for 250 crore for financial year 2025, right? Now I am coming to another scheme that is currently going on, that is EMPS, Electric Mobility Promotion Scheme. So under EMPS, government is also supporting like 3.72 lakhs of vehicles. Right, that this scheme also had started from this year April. So these skills are already going on. So that's why we did not heard anything specifically or particularly for automotive industry. And another thing, I think that government also launched this month only, July. So government also launched e-mobility roadmap, right? So there also government has allocated more than 1,200 crores of investment, and there is also that fund is also allocated between energy storage, EV aggregators, materials, and charging, right? So all these things are also going to help automotive industry. So that's why government, I guess, did not mention anything about automotive industry. But obviously, the on the other front, like the manufacturers were expecting to reduce GST, or not only on the battery, also on the auto components. Like if you compare with Japan, Singapore, or the other countries, the auto components GST is very less. So that we could hear from government from this budget.
You don't believe there would be an impact with the reduction in custom duties for minerals like lithium? It won't boost local manufacturing.
Can I answer?
Yeah.
So I think the automotive industry is like a significant driver of the economy also. You have to look at it that way, that it has like direct and indirect employment generation and the potential contributes to almost 7.1% of GDP. And across the world, I think we are in kind of a transition of finding a better powertrain, like, whether it's hybrid, whether it's EVs, or whether it's sticking to a cleaner way of getting natural, you know, petrol and diesel, like a better, cleaner petrol or diesel. So, I mean, cost reduction of these minerals will definitely help. I feel that if we can assemble batteries in India, and finding a bigger thing is if we find a reserve, like we've already heard that we found a reserve in Jammu and Kashmir for lithium. And if we start extracting that and start producing that, it will also boost. But for now, I don't see that happening in the next few years.
Thanks, Nikhil, for these insights. I want to just build on top of the lithium situation and the PLI, the pivot towards PLI schemes. Now, widely it was believed some of these moves were being made to attract Tesla into India, and now it seems like Tesla is not coming to India. There have been reports that they are refocusing and they don't intend to come to India. In fact, Elon Musk also cancelled his trip to India. Um, with with this focus away from FAME 3, or what would have been FAME 3, towards more PLI derived incentives, would this be a net positive for pushing EVs or hybrids in India? Somen, your thoughts, and then maybe Nikhil.
Yeah. So if you look at India's passenger car market related to Tesla's entry to India market, so only like less than 10% market contributes to premium passenger car market in India, right? So even if you look at electric vehicle, so the market opportunity for Tesla will be very less. So that's why Tesla is hesitating to enter in India. And also, if you look at the price point, Tesla is operating currently, that is around 30,000 USD, around that, right? So if Tesla wants to enter India, I think Tesla has to develop model which can like satisfy Indian consumers, right? So maybe model around 20K or 15K USD, right? So that's why I guess Tesla is hesitating to India. There is no direct, I think, relation between the government policy. I think also Indian government cannot change policy for one particular OEM. So on an overall direction, the policy is good, supporting not only our OEMs, also the ecosystem players, and also like related to the localization of lithium ions and everything. So if you look at still India is importing those battery cells from either Taiwan, Korea, or China. So that's why if India can build like local manufacturing for battery cells, so mostly India is working on battery packs currently. So that can save a lot and reduce cost of the vehicle. So currently the battery cost is nearly 40 to 50% of a car, right? So if a government reducing or eradicating the BCGs, so yeah, the cost of the vehicles can be reduced by 5 to 10%, right? So that can reduce also the cost of vehicle. So yeah, those will be good impact. And regarding missing, yeah, I don't think like there is no major missing, but yeah, there will be no limit. So as an consumers or as an ecosystem player, everyone expect more, right? So and automotive is not only the one industry. So there are many industry what can impact on overall India's growth. So that's why on overall, I guess it was a good budget.
I personally feel I personally feel that Tesla, I mean, government was really trying hard and pushing hard to get Tesla in India and, kind of make it like a benchmark thing that we got Tesla in India and they started production in India, but that never happened. I also feel personally that because their biggest manufacturing hub is in China, so there was a situation for everyone to decide whether he wants to switch to a plus one market like most of the manufacturing companies do. They have a plus one. But I think it kind of a geopolitical decision by him to stick to China and just not because his major chunk of business comes from China. He sells the most there also. But we've seen like companies like BYD come in India and storm at that price point where Tesla was supposed to come. So I don't see a price point parity over here that if Tesla would have come with the Model 3 and they wouldn't have been able to sell it. Maybe because they would have been manufacturing under the cost would have been even lesser. So I personally feel that Tesla is a big miss for India because that would have also kind of installed a lot of superchargers, a lot of that infrastructure push that we needed, and also the tech that we needed to have that everything, the whole EV ecosystem in place. And for the fact of the matter is that Indian EV market is projected to grow at almost 46% between 2022 to 2030. So that is like creating 5 million direct indirect jobs. So it's a huge market. And we have seen the government how it's pushing EV market, taking away the older diesel and petrol cars, making everybody buy incentivize EVs. Like the UP government recently announced that they don't have to pay road tax by putting down the cost of hybrid vehicles 1.5 lakh rupees, which is a major discount for people who are buying a 15 lakh rupees high rider or a Honda City hybrid. So that is something I think the whole it's not should be like not just state wise incentivizing of these cleaner vehicles.
Actually, this builds upon a point that I was about to get on, Nikhil. There's been a trend of late in the last couple of quarters, actually globally, just not in India, that EV sales have plateaued and even Tesla is feeling the heat. Their numbers have gone down, their profitability has gone down. And people globally are choosing hybrid vehicles more. And if you look at India, a sub 25 lakh market, there are fundamentally three cars which are hybrids, which is the Honda City, the High Rider, and the Grand Vitara by Maruti. So, is there anything in this budget which would propel hybrids or some of the other forms of propulsion, like hydrogen or ethanol? Somen, Nikhil?
Unfortunately, not. That's what we were wanting to hear. Actually, we were waiting to see that if there is an incentive towards the cleaner fuels. While electric vehicles, I have seen, and I agree to that sales have plateaued because the reason is that everybody feels that it's not the right step right now. There has to be a step in between. That is the hybrid. You move from one technology to other and feel safe. There's no range anxiety. There's self-charging cars, and you get better mileage out of it, and a lot of other incentives that you get when you buy a hybrid car, which is for EVs. Yeah, this was like a good fad for 4 or 5 years, and everybody loved it, and you love the instant acceleration. But what after that? After that, what do you do with that car? You get bored out of it. And also a lot of people are worried when I talk to people who want to buy an EV. They say, "What will happen to my car after 8 years? Would the battery still be alive? Would I be able to sell it?" Because in petrol and diesel cars, you can go and get it repaired. But with the EVs, this like, what's the next step after the battery goes bad? Or, would we even have the same technology after 8 years? Would it be graphene batteries? So would that car that you bought for 60 lakhs or 50 lakhs today would even be 5 lakh rupees after 8 years? So everybody has that fear. And that is why that hybrids have really taken a jump. And I personally feel that government should also kind of push hybrids for now and then kind of make us move towards electric if we feel that is eventually the right next step, or maybe also work on alternative fuel sources like hydrogen and all.
Yeah, I also agree with Nikhil. Like there was no mention about hybrid vehicles, so that was actually automotive industry was expecting. So yeah, obviously electrical vehicle is the future, but currently government should have focused on hybrid vehicles. Yeah, obviously, as Nikhil also mentioned, there is no direction like what will be the life cycle value of the cost after end of life cycle. So there also government has to work on recycling the materials. So I guess regarding that, initially mentioned their government launched e-mobility roadmap. So their government is focusing on also materials and recycling. And as we know that most of the materials being used in battery that is controlled by China, right? So government has to focus on extraction of those materials, building charging infrastructure, lot of things to do. So that's why it will take some time. Government can focus on hybrid vehicles before leapfrogging to battery electric vehicle.
My last bit is that the whole transition from these petrol and diesel vehicles was to lessen our dependency on Gulf countries. That was the whole aim of it. But now the whole ecosystem change to electric has put us globally that dependency on Chinese market, which is also not right, because you just move the chunk of money and funds from Gulf countries to China, because the components, the battery, the lithium ion, everything is coming out of China. And the best vehicles also somehow are coming out of China now. They have the biggest electric EV market, and they have great cars coming out of their stable. So that is also kind of something we've never wanted, that just dependency shift from one country to another.
Actually, if you just think about it, this how can India compete with a market which is as well developed as China, particularly when you think of EVs, because they are also kind of outdoing, the incumbent manufacturers like the Volkswagen Group, globally, all the big manufacturers, all the American giants like Ford and GM, and even Tesla. Elon Musk often says the threat he sees is from the new Chinese manufacturers like BYD and the other manufacturers like Neo and Xiaopeng. So what can be done? And just final thoughts on this budget from an auto sector for both you, Somen, and for Nikhil.
Okay, yeah. Like if you look at China's automotive industry, particularly electric vehicle industry, so this journey not started like last few years. If you look at that, started from early of 2000s, like when particularly we saw battery powered electric two-wheeler adoption, right? Then it shifted towards passenger cars. So what China has done, like they shifted the platform of the vehicles, right? They developed cars on new platform that help them to reduce the go-to market, right? So there also the international players are struggling, where international players generally develop a car nearly 3 years. So that Chinese car makers are developing nowadays 12 to 18 months, right? So that's why recently, if you look at Volkswagen did partnership with Xpeng, and Stellantis did partnership with Leapmotor, right? So that's why international players are also partnering with Chinese player to know technical know-how and improve their production and also product qualities and specifications. But now if you look at the other regulations are coming on, as government is supporting China, so that help China to grow. So that's why Europe, US, so all the developed regions are putting tax, right? Because we know like BYD, Neo, Xpeng all developed because of China government support. So that's why government support can help Indian players to compete with global markets, and also Indian players go for going out to global, right, to become global players. So that is I think major missing for Indian automakers that India can do. So and another thing I want to talk upon, like everyone is talking about EVs, right? But not everyone is talking about the power generation. So if you are burning fossil fuels and powering EVs, that is also not good. So government touched upon something on energy security and renewable energy. So that also government has to work, and also government has to work on smart grid development. Like if, for an example, in a peak time, like during morning 8 to 10, or evening time 6 to 8 p.m. So if at that time most of the cars or vehicles get charged on our grid, so that can damage our grid. So right. So before transitioning into EVs, government has to work on to transitioning grid into smart grid. So there are multiple factors which can impact overall EV development. So there, India government has to learn and develop, and it's not only EVs. So one thing I want to talk about, like the Chinese cars are smart cars, right? They are providing smart features. So that I particularly wanted to hear from government, not related to budget, how government is planning to transition into electric, connected and autonomous mobility, and how Indian government will be developing infrastructure for this transition. Yeah, and if government can solve these issues, I think India can be one of the top automakers or a hub for in the automotive industry. And we also expect India's automotive sales to grow faster than any of the other parts of the world, because number of cars, two-wheelers, that is on the lower side. And in terms of two-wheeler markets, we are also expecting India to surpass China, and already India is the fourth largest passenger car maker. Uh, but we are also expecting to India to surpass Japan and enter into top three market. So yeah, overall, on a overall, I think yeah, India has to do a lot of things in this automotive industry to become competitive and also automotive hub in the global market.
Yes, I think I agree with Sumain that China has got the first movers advantage, and they've been doing it for a while. What we saw in the last century was Germans and Americans really built automobile. Now China, it's their turn, and what they're doing is essentially building the EV industry, and everything is based out of their factory, their mega factory. So whatever electric vehicle is coming out anywhere in the world, somehow China has a major chunk of it. So I agree with him, and I think I'll wrap it up now because we anyways exceeded the time.
Thanks a lot, Soumen and Nikhil. Look forward to having more conversations about this. And this was my first budget with Business World. Hope to do many more with you guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Sahil, for moderating the previous panel. And I have the responsibility now to give the closing remarks of this union budget. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
All right. So, on behalf of everyone at BW Businessworld, I would like to express my gratitude to all the panelists who joined us yesterday and today to share their insights from their respective sectors on what this budget means. I'm sure that has added a lot of value to our viewers' understanding of this budget. But as we conclude this set of post-budget panel discussions, and if I have to sum up the developments since yesterday, this budget has been described in different ways. Some have called it as the one which is future-proofing the Indian economy, a budget which has laid the foundation for the future, a budget which is sensitive towards aspiration, or a budget which will act as a catalyst. And the list can go on and on. But if I have to describe it, I'll borrow it from one of our guests, Mr. Prabal Basu Roy, who had described it as the one which would reflect continuity with change. So, what are these two elements? Continuity, of course, the path towards fiscal consolidation, not loosening the strings of the purse despite the recent electoral mandate, but at the same time, very clearly bringing the coalition dynamics at play, given the special package to its ally partner states such as Andhra Pradesh and Bihar. And mind you, here also at instances, it is not directly something that will come out from the government's purse. For example, the rupees 15,000 crore assistance to Andhra Pradesh will be arranged through multilateral agencies. Second, within 5 minutes into the budget speech, the big theme of the budget was visible, and the focus of the themes clearly reflected that this government has taken the lesson from the electoral mandate by focusing on employment, skilling, MSMEs, and the middle class. In fact, employment was the big acronym which has been used to describe this budget at large, which shows the message that this government wants to give on the employment front, as it was the most contested issue in this election. Third, there are some progressive announcements, such as those on critical minerals, nuclear energy, space economy, which will help in giving them that push given the nascent stage, and the private sector's participation has been encouraged. But beyond these announcements, I want to leave you with certain questions which are political and economic, as we are roughly 6 months away from another full budget, which will be for financial year 26. First, the allies have got well accommodated in this budget. The opposition has already termed this as the budget which has neglected other states, with the leader of the opposition, Rahul Gandhi, calling it a Kursi Bachao budget. How will this be mobilized in the upcoming elections just months later? And the larger message it sends to regional electorate to have a greater say and accommodation in policy making. Second, the changes with respect to stock market taxation were not taken well by the stock market. However, it was no surprise given how the economic survey, a day before the budget, raised concern about over-financialization of the Indian market. Will this taxation go further up from here? That is something which is to be watched out. Third, another observation by the economic survey was on the government putting the onus of job creation on the private sector, since they have been swimming deep in profits. And if you see the employment-related announcements, it's not actually the government providing them, but it is incentivizing the private sector to provide it. Also, the capex at 11 lakh crore has remained unchanged. No doubt, it is a high base. But is that a signal to the private sector to come in more aggressively now? And from here on, what will be the government's capex trajectory? Fourth, the government has put the fiscal deficit at 4.9% of the GDP for the current financial year and 4.5% for the next financial year, which is financial year 26. Moreover, it is now linking the medium-term fiscal consolidation glide path to debt to GDP ratio rather than fiscal deficit GDP ratio, which is a welcome change. But will it be able to stay on that path? Remember, this fiscal, it had that one-off transfer from the Reserve Bank of India, which was huge at rupees 2.1 trillion. That may not be available next year. And from FY26 onwards, populist compulsions may take over, given that politically important states will be up for election. And lastly, let's turn our focus to the middle class. In my personal reading, in the last 10 years, we have not seen the kind of outrage over the budget on social media that we have seen this year. Its magnitude is of a different level this time. Will the middle class concerns be addressed? How much of a burden can this salaried class can take? How much of a burden can their investments take, which are a result of years of savings? Will there be any course correction? Or is this section really that minuscule in the electoral mathematics of this country that they will continue to be loaded with this burden? Let's keep our eyes on all of these and look forward to the next budget, which is hardly 6 months from now. Also, I want to leave you on this note that next week our budget issue will hit the stands. Do look out for that issue, as we'll try to address some of these questions in detail in that issue. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, keep reading and watching BW Business.